Chapter 280. An hour later, they could see the transmission mountain in the distance. Schwa, 2 cultivators flew out from the forest. They respectfully bowed. "Greetings, young master." Wang Yuanan stopped. He asked, "Are you my uncle's people?" "We were ordered by the general to wait here for young master," the 2 respectfully said. Wang Yuanan went straight to the point. "Where is he?" "He is in the tent." "Lead the way." Qin Yu sat down cross-legged. He suddenly frowned. As he opened his eyes, he saw that the tent had been opened from the outside. Wang Yuanan strode in. He coldly said, "Qin Yu, you never thought we would meet again here." Qin Yu's expression didn't change. "Fellow Daoist Wang, what is the meaning of this?" A subordinate shouted out, "You're still pretending. You stole my family's young master's fire Kirin. Do you think this matter will end like this?" Qin Yu secretly frowned. When he killed the fire Kirin, there was no one around, so how did they know? The subordinate coldly sneered. He opened the eye between his eyebrows and a brilliant light shot out, clearly displaying the scene of the fire Kirin's death. "What else do you have to say?" Gloominess flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. He never thought that there would be such supernatural powers in this world that could reconstruct what had happened. His complexion sank before he calmed down. "That's right, I was the one who killed the fire Kirin." "Brat, it's good that you admit it. Obediently hand over the fire Kirin, otherwise don't blame us for being impolite." Another subordinate shouted out. Qin Yu lightly said, "I was the one who killed the fire Kirin, so it naturally belongs to me." Insolence. "If it weren't for my family's young master severely wounding that beast, do you think you could kill the fire Kirin with your strength? Let me tell you, obediently hand it over so that you don't suffer more." Wang Yuanan lifted a hand, preventing his subordinate from speaking. "Qin Yu, hand over the fire Kirin and we will write off everything from before, otherwise." A cold light flashed in his eyes. Qin Yu frowned. "The transmission mountain is already under the jurisdiction of the beast hunting battalion. Do you still dare to steal it?" Wang Yuanan laughed. "I naturally wouldn't dare to steal it, but if you die, who will speak nonsense? Perhaps we might even be able to obtain the merit of killing a monster beast spy." He flicked his sleeves, "Attack." As he shouted just now, the auras of several nearby subordinates erupted at the same time. The air suddenly became thick and sticky, covering Qin Yu like a swamp. A trace of pride flashed in Wang Yuanan's eyes. Did he really think he had the patience to talk so much nonsense? Anyone who dared to steal his fire Qilin was doomed to die, and no one could save them. Schwa, he took a step forwards and raised his hand. His 5 fingers formed a claw as he grasped at Qin Yu's head. Bang! A muffled sound rang out, and Wang Yuanan's eyes widened in shock. He staggered back, each step leaving a deep footprint in the ground. Qin Yu retreated even faster. He borrowed the force of the shaking to tear apart the imprisoning strength around him. With a flash of light, he smashed through the tent. Wang Yuanan was enraged. "Capture him!" Qin Yu shouted out loud. With his cultivation galvanizing, his voice spread far and wide. "Wang Yuanan, how bold of you! You actually want to kill your companion and steal his treasure." The entire teleportation mountain was startled, as over 10 figures arrived at the scene. "Who dares to make such a ruckus and violate military rules? Do you not want to live?" The bearded man roared out, his single eye flashing with a cold killing intent. Qin Yu quickly cupped his hands together. "I am Qin Yu, a new beast hunter. I was originally traveling with Wang Yuanan and the others, but I never thought they would try to steal my treasure and try to kill me. I had no choice but to shout for help. I ask for my lord's forgiveness." The man's eyes widened. plotting to kill your companion. The reason he was blinded in the past was because he had been betrayed. In his life, he hated this sort of person the most, so his face filled with cruelty. The two cultivators who brought Wang Yuanan in all had bitter expressions as they rushed over. They blocked the several people behind him and said in a low voice, "Young master, please don't do anything." Wang Yuanan roared, "Get out of the way. No one dares to steal my things." The two cultivators only blocked him. They cursed in their hearts as they felt a headache coming on. Not only had several people gone in, but they had also caused such a ruckus. If it were anyone else they wouldn't care, but the one-eyed dragon in front of them, Tong Hanshan, was an illustrious and famous figure in the beast-hunting battalion. He was known to be lawless and difficult to deal with. Today's matter had been discovered by him. If they didn't handle it well, not only would they suffer, but even the general would be implicated. Tong Hanshan narrowed his eyes. "Who is he?" Reporting to Commandant Tong, Su Yuanan is General Yuan's nephew. He came with the other beast hunters to gain experience in the battalion. This fellow Daoist Qin Yu should only be a misunderstanding, a cultivator said with a smile. Tong Hanshan's complexion darkened. Yuan Jingzhe, within the entire beast hunting battalion, there were less than a handful of people in charge, and this person was one of them. Although he was ranked towards the back, his strength wasn't something he could compare with. To offend Yuan Jingzhe for a stranger wasn't worth it. But, since he had interfered in today's matters, if he were to be scared away by a mere name, then he would lose all face. As he hesitated, Qin Yu suddenly said, "Thank you for your help, Commandant Tong. I think about it carefully, I really did misunderstand Brother Wang. He shouldn't have any ill intentions towards me." Yes, this is definitely a misunderstanding. As this person spoke, he winked at Qin Yu. Wang Yuanan wasn't an idiot. From the expressions of these two people, he could tell that this surname Tong wasn't easy to deal with. If they were to fight, there would likely be trouble. But as he thought about how the fire Kirin had been snatched away by Qin Yu, he felt as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat. He found it hard to breathe. He clenched his teeth and said, "That's right, it was a misunderstanding." Tong Hanshan's eyes flashed with satisfaction. This boy was quite tactful. He lightly said, "That's for the best. Be more careful in the future and don't casually stir up any trouble." He turned and led his people away. Qin Yu bowed. As he stood up, Wang Yuanan clenched his teeth, his face cold. But now, he couldn't casually attack again. "We're leaving." He angrily led his people away. What happened at the transmission mountain was like a small splash in a long river. It didn't cause any great waves and soon vanished from sight. One day later, the transmission array was restored. Qin Yu, Wang Yuanan, and the others, as well as the new beast hunters that arrived, vanished in a flash of light. Over 80% of the new batch of beast hunters had died. Only 17 people arrived at the camp. After the news was confirmed, there was a great deal of sorrow. Those that made bets naturally made a great profit. After compensating several lucky fellows, their mouths were still covered in grease. Originally, there were many beast hunters that were prepared to find trouble with these 17 people. They had caused them to lose points, so it was natural for them to be taught a lesson. However, when news of the newcomers encountering the fire Kirin spread out, the beast hunters fell silent. They expressed their sympathy and condolences, thinking that it wasn't easy for 17 of them to survive. However, as this news spread out, there was also the news that some lucky boy had really managed to kill the fire Kirin and even made it to the camp alive. This time, it really left others envious and drooling. The fire Kirin itself was a high-level monster beast with the potential to become a monster king. After killing it, one could obtain rich rewards. Moreover, not too long ago, the beast hunting platform had added another piece of news. In order to avoid future retaliation from the fire Kirin, the monster hunters that killed it could obtain even more points. It was said that the entire team of newcomers had fought with the fire Kirin and suffered heavy casualties. Then, some boy called Chinyu had picked up the profits. What the fuck, what a lucky bastard. And most importantly, why didn't I have any? However, he was just a newcomer. Even if he killed the fire Kirin, he might not know just how precious it was. Thus, in the camp that was specially prepared for the newcomers and had the worst environment, many people immediately gathered. A large fellow casually grabbed a cultivator on the side of the road. He said in a muffled voice, "Boy, where is that Chinyu?" His face flushed red. In front of this large fellow, he felt as weak as a piece of straw. He gulped and hurriedly said, "In front of us, that black tent." Puff, before he finished speaking, he was tossed to the ground. The large fellow strode forwards and arrived in front of the tent. He rushed in and swept his eyes around. "Who is Chinyu?" Chinyu frowned. He stood up and cupped his hands together. "I am. May I ask what this senior is here for?" Facing a divine soul realm cultivator, he naturally had to be respectful. The large fellow directly said, "I heard that when you came, you killed a fire Kirin. I just happened to need the blood of a fire Kirin to cultivate, so sell it to me." His tone was unquestionable. Chinyu's heart sank. Under the shining eyes of the large fellow, he felt as if there was a blade pressing down on his back. It was clear that if he refused, this person wouldn't give up. At this time, the tent was opened again. "Who is Chinyu?" The large fellow's complexion changed. He turned and said, "Young Baijan, you are too late. The fire Kirin is mine." Young Baijan wore mottled armor and his withered body looked common. But, a divine light occasionally flashed in his eyes, causing one's heart to tremble like an arrow. "Yours? Then take it out." Chinyu's thoughts stirred. He respectfully said, "Junior Chinyu greets Senior Yang." Young Baijan smiled. "You are Chinyu. Is the fire Kirin in your hands?" Chinyu nodded. "Yes. That's good. Sell the fire Kirin to me. What do you want? Just say it." Young Baijan waved his hand. The large fellow was enraged. A wild aura broke out from his body and he seemed to instantly transform into a great beast. "Young Baijan, don't go too far. I came here first, so the fire Kirin naturally belongs to me." Young Baijan responded with equal harshness. A swift and fierce spear intent soared into the skies, as if it could pierce through the world. There's no need to speak of such nonsense like first come first serve. If you want to fight, then I will accompany you. Cough cough, the two of you are quite angry. How about we sit down and discuss who the fire Kirin belongs to? Another person stepped into the tent. The auras of 3 divine soul realm cultivators faintly clashed. The air was so heavy that it seemed as if it would drip water. The newcomers in the tent nearly shed tears. "Just what are you doing?" Not too far away, Wang Yuanan was gnashing his teeth so hard that they nearly broke. He howled inwardly, "Mine, this is mine, it should be mine. Damn you Chinyu, you bastard, I will never let you off." But his eyes couldn't help but fall onto the divine soul powerhouse that just entered the tent. He hoped that this person could smoothly buy the fire Kirin. To him, this was far too important. No matter what price he had to pay, he couldn't allow any accidents to occur. Chapter 281. The big fellow was the first to quote a price. "Chinyu, I will give you 1,000 points. Give me the fire Kirin." Many of the beast hunters that were attracted here sucked in a breath of cold air, envy in their eyes. Heavens, 1,000 points. One had to hunt down 50 nascent soul-level monster beasts in order to obtain that amount. This was a shocking amount of money. Young Baijan sneered. You want to obtain the fire Kirin for 1,000 points. I bid 1,500 points. Qin Yu, I won't lie to you. You absolutely won't suffer a loss if you buy the fire Kirin at this price. The big fellow's eyes widened in anger. But, he had just exchanged for a body transformation arcane technique some time ago and the 1,000 points he had were borrowed. He couldn't increase the price any further. He clenched his teeth. Qin Yu, if you give me the fire Kirin, I will give you a squad member spot in addition to 1,000 points. You can directly join my squad. Not only will your safety increase, but you will be able to hunt monster beasts in the future and obtain a steady stream of points. Yang Baijan furrowed his eyebrows. A squad member spot was an enormous price. After all, in order to join their beast hunting squad, one had to be an experienced hunter. Moreover, there was a strict requirement for strength. But at this time, before he could speak, the Divine Soul Realm Cultivator who came in last smiled. Qin Yu, although you can obtain more points in a high-level beast hunting squad, you will also need to face all sorts of dangers. With your cultivation, I fear the dangers will be extremely high. So, I don't recommend you accept this seemingly generous condition. Wang Yuanan's eyes brightened. This person was truly worthy of being his uncle's advisor. His methods were swift and fierce. With just a few words, he had severed Yang Baijan's greatest support. Then, as long as he promised them benefits, how could Qin Yu not agree? As expected, this person's smile became even more relaxed. He continued to say, I can give you 3,000 points. This price is almost acceptable. If you can purchase a Monster King level monster beast, you will definitely make a great profit. How about it? Do you want to sell the fire Kirin to me? Qin Yu was well aware that there was something about the fire Kirin that he didn't know. Otherwise, how could a high-level monster beast attract so many powerhouses to chase after it at such a high price? Instinctively, he didn't want to sell the fire Kirin. But with 3 Divine Soul Realm powerhouses surrounding him, if he really refused, there would be great trouble. For a time, he couldn't think of a reason to refuse. He could only reveal a hesitant expression, as if he were deep in thought. He hoped that if he dragged things out a bit longer, there would be a favorable turn. In the worst-case scenario, if he really wanted to sell the fire Qilin, the longer he delayed, the more experts he would attract, and the higher the chance he would be able to sell it at a high price. Yang Baijan shouted out loud, Qin Yu, I will give you 2,000 points as well as the status of a squad member. You have to be clear about this. If you miss this chance, you will need at least 2 years to become a member of a high-level beast hunter squad. The big fellow's eyes darkened. I need the fire Kirin to cultivate. If you help me, then I will naturally look after you in the camp in the future. There was a deeper meaning to his words. If Lin Ming refused, then he would have to be careful in the future. A naked threat. Humph. Chen Taiyan, this is the beast hunting battalion, a place with rules. Don't go too far. The last Divine Soul Realm Cultivator said in a low voice, Qin Yu, make your decision. I want to see just who dares to move against you. These words sounded very impressive, but in reality, there was not the slightest bit of reality. It was completely empty talk. Qin Yu's complexion was bitter. He had a worried and fearful expression on his face. He was rapidly weighing his options, trying to decide just what to do. At this time, a light voice sounded out from outside the tent. 3 captains, it seems you are in quite a good mood. The complexions of Yang Baijan and the others changed. They revealed looks of shock and quickly turned to leave. They cupped their hands together and bowed, Greetings, Counselor Su. There were staff officers in the army, but most of them had low statuses and were dependent on others. This Mr. Su Jiao was also one of the staff officers. However, the one Su Jiao served was the Lord Commander of the Beast Hunting Battalion, and he was also highly regarded by the commander. His status was no trifling matter, thus he was respectfully addressed as Counselor Su. Su Jiao cupped his hands together. I am here on the orders of the commander to ask Qin Yu, the one who killed the fire Kirin, whether or not he has finished his preparations to hand it over to the beast hunting platform. Wang Yuanan's complexion paled. He never thought that the Lord Commander would intervene at such a critical moment. He hurriedly winked at his uncle's subordinate, but that divine soul realm cultivator simply lowered his head, as if he didn't know what was going on. This nearly caused his lungs to explode with rage. The big fellow changed his rude and overbearing attitude and smiled kindly. Since this is the will of the commander, I will naturally make way. I was a bit rash before, so I asked Counselor Su to explain on my behalf. Yang Baijian nodded again and again. That's right. Su Jiao faintly smiled. The actions of the three captains are also reasonable. I'm sure the Lord Commander will understand. As he spoke, he cupped his hands together. May I ask, who is Qin Yu? Qin Yu respectfully bowed. Greetings, Counselor Su. Su Jiao swept his eyes around and revealed a bit of surprise. He immediately composed himself and said, Qin Yu, the Lord Commander has sent out a message on the beast hunting platform. Anyone who kills the fire Kirin will obtain 800 points and will also have a chance to make a request to the Lord Commander. Of course, this request must be within a reasonable range. I came here today on the orders of the Lord Commander to ask you whether or not you are willing to hand over the fire Kirin's corpse and receive the reward from the platform. Everyone revealed looks of envy. Wang Yuanan's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He wished he could use his eyes to tear Qin Yu to pieces. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He finally understood why so many people had taken a liking to his fire Kirin. The most important point was that reasonable request. This request was limited to a reasonable range and the options were much greater. It was far more valuable than 1,000, 2,000, or even 3,000 points. If so, then the price that Yang Baijian and the other two divine soul realm martial artists had put forth was simply taking him for a fool. However, in a situation where their strengths weren't balanced, this sort of thing was normal. Qin Yu's thoughts raced. After a moment of silence, he bowed and said, Qin Yu is willing to hand over the fire Kirin. This was necessary. Not only could he extricate himself from his current predicament, but he could also obtain the greatest benefits. Although Yang Baijian and the other two knew that as long as Qin Yu wasn't an idiot, he would definitely agree, they still couldn't help but reveal looks of disappointment. Qin Yu continued to say, it's just that this junior will need to consider the specific request. Su Jiao smiled. This opportunity is precious. You do need to consider it carefully. He paused for a moment and said, how about this? Tonight, you can stay at the inn. I'll give you a night of quiet time to think about what you want. Tomorrow, the Lord Commander will summon you. Qin Yu hurriedly nodded. His eyes swept around and he discovered that the envy in many people's eyes had suddenly deepened. An inn, wasn't that a place to stay? Was there a need to be like this? When Qin Yu was led to the place, he finally understood why those beast hunters would reveal such envious and hateful looks. An inn was indeed a place to stay, but it wasn't simply a place to stay. Amidst the waning lights, there was a hazy and ambiguous atmosphere. The beautiful women sitting on the railing seemed to have countless little hooks in their eyes, making it hard for one to control their mind and soul. The guide had a face full of envy. Counselor Su has already arranged everything for you today. If you have any requests, feel free to ask. He turned and left. Qin Yu was immediately warmly led into the inn. But, what left the beautiful mulberry madam disappointed was that this young and strong man who looked like a dragon or a tiger, as well as a tender and delicious man, didn't reveal the slightest change in his expression. He refused the banquet and girls that she had arranged for him, only wanting a room that was absolutely quiet. He pushed open the door and waved the servant away. Then, Qin Yu closed the door, leaving behind all the noise outside. He sat down cross-legged and began to think about what request he should make that would be the most advantageous to him. Time slowly passed. The door remained closed. The eyes of the Madame Mulberry that had been observing the entire time flashed with surprise, followed by a light appreciation. This place of hers was known as a brothel of pleasure where even an iron rod could be ground into a needle. It wasn't as simple as it seemed. Whether it was the decorations or the air, the aphrodisiacs that were constantly burning were able to stir up a man's desire to the greatest extent. To be able to remain motionless and calm his mind, this person couldn't be considered simple. The Madame Mulberry waved her hand. She called for a servant and said a few words. The servant respectfully bowed and hurried away. Soon, Mr. Su Jiao, who was reading a book, received the news. After a moment of silence, he faintly smiled. This junior was actually a smart person. The next day arrived as scheduled. In the room, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. A sharp light flashed in them and he revealed a light smile. He finally thought of how he should put forward his request to this Lord Commander. There was a knock on the door. When it opened, it was the soldier that had brought Qin Yu here yesterday. This person had a strange expression. He looked at Qin Yu several times and said, "Please follow me." He first saw Su Jiao. At the beginning of his work, he had waited a long time before he was granted an audience with the commander. However, Qin Yu didn't dare to have any objections. As the person with the highest authority within the beast hunting battalion, obtaining an audience with him had already far surpassed Qin Yu's expectations. The entire way was heavily guarded. After pushing open the door, Qin Yu saw the legendary Lord Commander. He was a gentle and scholarly handsome man. He looked to be in his 30s and had an elegant demeanor. "Brother Su, is this the Qin Yu who killed the fire Kirin?" Although Su Jiao was gentle to others, he was incomparably arrogant to the bones. But at this time, he slightly bowed and respectfully said, reporting to the commander, "He is Qin Yu." Qin Yu hurriedly bowed. "Greetings, Lord Commander." His heart shook. At first glance, this Lord Commander looked very ordinary. However, if one were to sense him carefully, he would be filled with fear. His entire person was like a great sea. When he was calm and gentle, he didn't feel anything at all. But once he was enraged, there would be monstrous waves that would destroy all. Blue Sea Realm. Moreover, he wasn't an ordinary Blue Sea Realm. Qin Yu didn't know how strong the Lord Commander was, but there was one thing he was sure of. The Lord Commander was absolutely the strongest powerhouse he had ever seen in his life. The commander's eyes flashed. Qin Yu stiffened. He suddenly felt as if his entire being was being seen through. Not bad. No wonder he could kill the fire Kirin. He had clearly sensed something. Chapter 282. The commander smiled. "That's enough, don't be so nervous. The reason I called you here today is to ask you what request you have. I can promise that as long as it is reasonable, I will agree to it." Su Jiao's eyes flashed with surprise. He thought for a moment and then said with a deep meaning in his voice, "Qin Yu, you must have heard the Lord Commander's words. You must consider them carefully." Qin Yu nodded. "Thank you for the reminder, Counselor Su." He bowed and earnestly said, "Lord Commander, Qin Yu hopes that I can obtain your special permission not to join any hunting squads." The commander's expression didn't change. Are you saying that I have the right to act independently? Qin Yu respectfully nodded. At this time, even the Lord Commander revealed a look of surprise. Su Jiao frowned. He said, Qin Yu, do you know that everyone in the beast hunting battalion has a minimum audit quota that they must complete every month? I already knew about this before I came. Then, do you know that monster beasts run rampant in the wilderness? Powerful monster beasts are incalculable. If you walk alone and aren't careful, you will be beyond redemption. Qin Yu was solemn. This junior knows. This answer was the same as expressing his attitude. Su Jiao's frown deepened. He didn't speak further. The Lord Commander slowly said, Very well, I agree to your request. But, as long as you fail to complete the audit every month, you will be punished and your privileges will be revoked. You will have to rejoin the beast hunting squad. Qin Yu bowed. Thank you, Lord Commander. The commander waved his hand. Qin Yu drew back several steps and left. Su Jiao didn't send him off. After Qin Yu left, he respectfully said, Lord Commander, do you know why he made such a request? The commander smiled. He lightly said, Perhaps it's because he doesn't feel safe. You should also know about Yuan Jingzhi's interference, so you should be able to think of some reason. Su Jiao was startled. Commander is wise and farsighted. If so, then this Qin Yu has some other treasure in his hands that he doesn't want others to know about. The commander helplessly shook his head. To think that this sort of inferior flattery was actually done by you. It seems your methods have fallen too far. He narrowed his eyes, a light smile on his lips. Demon body, if he was worth cultivating, then he could pay more attention to him in the future. Qin Yu left the commander's office. Under the guidance of someone, he handed over the Fire Kirin's corpse and obtained 900 points as well as some essential items for a beast hunter. A cell phone, a point card, a map of the demonic beasts, and a set of black beast hunter robes. Ignoring everything else, this beast hunter's robe was of exceptionally good quality. Furthermore, it had an astonishing ability to conceal one's aura. In the wilderness, this robe might be able to save his life. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. May I ask how I can exchange points for items? The logistics department cultivator lightly said, the phone is pre-installed with the exchange app. Once you find it, open it, bind it to your points card, and you can exchange. Qin Yu lowered his head and operated. Sure enough, it was fast and convenient. He smiled and cupped his hands together to bid his farewells. Because he had obtained the special privilege of moving alone, he lived in a separate courtyard. This was already the treatment of a high-level beast hunter. Therefore, young Baijian was one of his neighbors. Seeing Qin Yu move in, his eyes subconsciously widened. As he thought about the Lord Commander's interference, he immediately thought he had guessed something. This Qin Yu seemed to have an extraordinary background. There was an extremely powerful array formation in the courtyard. Once it was activated, it could isolate the aura inside and outside, and it would not be affected in the slightest. Qin Yu took out his handphone and opened the exchange app once more. He typed in the words Ancient Alchemy Book and began to search. In the blink of an eye, countless lines of detailed information appeared on the screen. Alchemy Detailed Explanation. The author was an alchemy master from the Qi Empire's Great Alchemy Sect, the Blue Sky Sect, 3,000 years ago. This book recorded in detail what he had learned and comprehended during his early years in alchemy. Although there were many parts that weren't detailed, it was still a rare ancient alchemy book. Priced at 1,000 points. Minor Heavenly Cycle. This ancient alchemy book had been passed down for over 5,000 years. The specific author could not be verified. This ancient book blazed a unique path and used monster beast flesh and blood to refine pills, allowing the pill to strengthen the mortal body. Priced at 800 points. Yellow Court Codex. It was rumored that it came from the hands of the Yellow Court Great Emperor. Up until now, only the first, third, and seventh chapters remained. The rest had been destroyed and lost. It recorded 70 alchemy techniques. Priced at 600 points. Primary Pill Collection. Daoist Dongpa had spent 100 years collecting 800 pill recipes. It recorded many pill refinement methods in detail. Priced at 700 points. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. There really was one. He didn't hesitate to exchange for it. After tapping the screen several times, there were only 200 points left on his bound points card. Then, he received a call. After answering it, a pleasant female voice sounded out. Respected Beast Hunter Qin Yu, your exchange has been accepted. The primary pill collection will be delivered to you within an hour. I wish you a happy life. An hour later, a sword light landed outside his door. Qin Yu opened the courtyard door. The sword cultivator outside handed over a metal box. Beast Hunter Qin Yu, this is what you exchanged for. Please take the verification code. Qin Yu thought about the message he received on his handphone just now. When he opened it, there was indeed a set of messy and disorderly numbers. The sword cultivator pressed the metal box and a beam of light shot out from the top. It fell onto the messy numbers on the screen and with a light cracking sound, it slowly opened. A sealed book appeared before Zhang Xian's eyes. The sword cultivator gestured for Qin Yu to take it. He cupped his hands together and said, the delivery has been completed. Goodbye. Whoosh, his figure shot into the skies. Qin Yu didn't have time to sigh. The sword cultivator responsible for delivering the book was actually at the Divine Soul Realm. He closed the courtyard door and quickly returned to his room. He tore open the seal and the book's true appearance was revealed. The yellowish pages carried with them a rich aura of the years. It was clear it had existed for a long time. On the page, the words, Primary Pill Collection, emitted a faintly discernible aura. Qin Yu opened it and the book immediately emitted a bright light. Words flew up and fused into the point between his eyebrows. A moment later, the light faded away. The book in Qin Yu's hand trembled and then shattered into powder. He opened his eyes and a sharp light flashed in them. Qin Yu smiled. The contents of this, primary pill collection, had been completely branded into his mind. The countless pill recipes contained within were incomparably exquisite. With these pill recipes in hand, Qin Yu could gather spiritual plants in the wilderness and then use the little blue lamp to refine them into pills. After swallowing and refining them, his cultivation would rapidly rise. The nascent soul realm was considered the peak of the world in the land of exiles. But in the land of divinity and demons, they could barely be considered masters. Compared to the golden cores of the land of exiles, they were even a bit worse. Although improving one's martial talent was crucial and involved his future achievements, Qin Yu had to ensure he had enough strength to continue living. Only then could he consider more. Because of this, he had used a precious request to obtain the right to move freely. This was to make things more convenient for him. Of course, Qin Yu was well aware of the dangers in the wilderness that Su Jiao spoke of. But, he believed that with his own aura restraining methods, there shouldn't be any problems as long as he was a bit more cautious. This was because he simply didn't care about how much monster beasts he hunted. He only needed to complete the minimum assessment requirements. Most of his energy and time was spent on searching for spiritual plants to refine pills and increasing his cultivation. The fire Kirin was completely hopeless. Wang Yuanan's resentment towards Qin Yu had reached the limit. If it weren't for his uncle's guarantee that he would help him with other methods, Wang Yuanan feared he would have rushed forwards and turned Qin Yu into dregs. Although he knew it was impossible for him to do anything to Qin Yu within the beast hunting battalion, he still sent people to closely monitor Qin Yu's every move. Thus, he soon found out what Qin Yu was doing. He had wasted a precious request in exchange for the right to freely hunt monster beasts. He had spent 900 points to exchange for the primary pill collection. This brat's head must have been kicked by a donkey. If these were given to him, he might have already obtained the first-grade lotus by now. That bastard Qin Yu really deserved to be torn to shreds. Young master, it seems that this Qin Yu is worried that we will harm him, so he asked the commander to hunt monster beasts by himself. Zhang Qin sneered. It's just that he doesn't understand how terrifying the wilderness is. With his mere nascent soul cultivation, entering the wilderness is the same as seeking death. No, that's not right. Although Qin Yu is only a nascent soul, when you and I surrounded him that day, the strength we erupted with was only a bit worse than divine soul. If he wholeheartedly tries to preserve his life, then even if the wilderness is dangerous he might not be in danger. Another subordinate said. Young master, this subordinate suspects that this Qin Yu is an alchemist. Otherwise, why would he spend points to exchange for the useless, primary pill collection? Wang Yuanan's eyes flashed. You are saying that Qin Yu wants to use alchemy to gradually obtain status and increase his own strength? That's right. With his strength that is nearly comparable to divine soul, if he only wants to complete the minimum assessment and doesn't pursue hunting monster beasts for points, then there shouldn't be any problems in terms of safety. Then, he can refine pills in the camp and collect the benefits. Wang Yuanan sneered. What a good plan he has, but he needs to ask me if I agree or not. Immediately tell uncle that I want Qin Yu to stay in the camp and not accept any alchemy transactions. If he can't obtain any benefits and increase his cultivation, then once I break through and obtain status, I will find a reason to kill Qin Yu. At that time, I will at most receive a bit of punishment. Young master is right. This subordinate will immediately do so. As Qin Yu was pondering over the pill recipes in his mind, he didn't know that someone had already guessed his true meaning and had already responded. Within the primary pill collection, there were over 800 pill recipes. But most of them weren't useful to Qin Yu. What he lacked right now were pills needed to cultivate at the nascent soul realm. After careful screening, there were finally several types of pills that became his choices. Sun Moon Pill, Overwhelming Pill, Single Energy Replenishing Pill, Mountain River Pill. These 4 types of pills could strengthen one's magic power. Origin Chen Pill, Soul Recovery Pill, Extreme Clear Pill, Good Fortune Pill. These 4 types of pills could enhance the soul. Crouching Tiger Pill, Origin Dragon Pill, Blood Spirit Pill. These 3 types of pills could strengthen the mortal body. These 11 types of pills were all ordinary pills. Although their effects were average, they were relatively easy to gather and refine. If the effects weren't good, they could be accumulated in large quantities. Moreover, there was the purification effect of the little blue lamp. As long as the refinement process was simple, everything else wouldn't be a problem. Now that everything was ready, all he had to do was wait until he stepped into the wilderness and began searching for alchemy materials. Qin Yu wasn't worried about this. The land of divinity and demons was rich with heaven and earth spiritual bodies, thus the number of heavenly materials was unimaginable. In particular, now that he was deep in the wilderness, there were far fewer cultivators and far more spirit plants. As he sped along the way, he didn't have any thoughts of picking them. But as he walked along, he saw an astonishing number of them. 2 days later, Qin Yu had completely rested and his injuries had healed. Then, he quietly passed through the courtyard's transmission array and left the beast hunting battalion. Schwa. Chapter 283. Although the beast hunting battalion had extremely severe punishments for murdering their companions, there were still many cases of killing each other due to powerful benefits. In order to avoid unnecessary losses, Every hunting squad of the Beast Hunting Battalion had their own transmission array, and the transmission locations were all different. Chi Nu hunted alone and had his own residence, so he naturally enjoyed the same qualifications as other squads. Stepping out of the transmission array, he first looked around. There was a layer of dust on the ground. It was clear no one had been here for a long time. Chi Nu swept his eyes around. Then, he took a step forward and quietly flew outwards like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. Soon, he smelled a foul stench. Chi Nu's complexion didn't change and his movements became even gentler. Soon, a group of pitch-black monster beasts that lived not too far away from the entrance of the mountain appeared in front of him. He revealed a look of understanding. He finally understood why this transmission array hadn't been discovered by monster beasts for so many years. Smelly Fox, as its name implied, was a monster beast. Hidden beneath its black fur were incomparably developed sweat glands. These sweat glands secreted fluids that, when exposed to sunlight, would turn into the foul stench that Chi Nu smelled before. Human cultivators could endure it, but to monster beasts with their incomparably developed sense of smell, this sort of foul stench represented devastating damage. To build a transmission array deep within the living quarters of the smelly foxes, whoever thought of this method was truly a genius. Of course, if you had to ask why the smelly foxes didn't enter deep into the mountain, the first reason was because of their lazy personality, and the second reason was because of the sunlight. Only under the sunlight could sweat glands secrete fluid. Only when the stench was strong enough would there be nothing stupid enough to dare offend this smelly fox. Of course, these were all minor details. What Chi Nu needed to do now was to leave the belly of the mountain without alerting them. The smelly fox could be said to have no natural enemies. There were almost no living beings that were interested in it. Over the endless years, nearly all of its abilities had regressed. On its round body, only its large and furry ears retained their keen sense of hearing. Even the slightest movement in the wind couldn't be hidden from them. When a smelly fox woke up from its sleep, it would instantly spray out a massive amount of sweat. Then, that foul stench would nearly condense into essence. Chi Nu didn't want to be baptized by it. In the sea region, after swallowing the strange tumor, Chi Nu had obtained a superb ability to restrain his aura. By tightening his muscles, he was able to isolate all of his aura. His entire person was like a shadow. His feet quietly stepped, directly floating out from the group of sleeping stinky foxes. Paw! As his feet landed on the ground, Chi Nu's divine sense flowed out like water, quietly spreading out. At the same time, his aura remained in a state of isolation. 800 meters away, a monster beast that was gnawing on flesh and blood suddenly shook its ears. Then, a look of surprise appeared on its ferocious face that was covered in blood. What kind of demonic beast was this? He had never seen it before. It gave off the feeling of water vapor, just like the demonic beasts of the sea mentioned in his bloodline inheritance. But this was the wilderness, within the continent. How could a sea monster beast appear here? It shook its head, causing blood and flesh to splatter all over the ground. Its powerful hind legs moved slightly, and its streamlined body was like a sharp arrow that had been released from a bow, charging straight towards the source of the aura. However, just as the demonic beast's body passed through a dense thicket of thorns, it suddenly split apart. A pair of slender hands reached out and grabbed the demonic beast's neck. Gotcha! With a crisp sound, the figure in the thicket tumbled to the ground along with the demonic beast. Chi Nu smiled. With a flick of his sleeves, he put away the corpse of the demonic beast. With that, 30 points appeared in his points card. He was still 20 points away from the minimum monthly review standard. If he hunted down another monster beast of a similar rank, he would be able to complete it. As he thought, this wasn't difficult at all. Shwa! With a flash of light, Chi Nu's figure vanished from sight. High above the astral winds of the 9 heavens, at the floating mountain where the beast hunting battalion was located, the Lord Commander had a dignified expression as he looked through the jade slip in his hands. After a moment, he put down the jade slip and let out a deep breath. He slowly said, "Brother Su, immediately pass down the order that all activities of the beast hunting battalion will temporarily stop for 3 days." Su Jiao's complexion changed. "Commander, is it really going to erupt?" Hurry up and go, lest you cause more damage." Su Jiao quickly nodded and hurried away. Soon, through the signal tower at the summit, news spread to every corner of the floating mountain. Urgent notice. Due to the recent abnormalities in the spiritual strength of the world, there is a possibility that a spring will appear. For the next 3 days, all monster hunting squads are not allowed to hunt. Fellow monster hunters, perhaps there are still some things that you don't understand about the spiritual strength spring. Today, we will explain it to you once more. When the spiritual strength springs, it will create countless heavenly treasures in a short period of time. Moreover, a massive number of monster beasts will be drawn into the range of the spiritual strength spring. The danger level of the wilderness will greatly increase. Every time a spiritual strength spring appears, there will be a massive number of deaths and injuries. The monster hunting squads that have gone out will return as soon as possible in order to avoid any losses. To my beast hunting battalion, this is a great tempering. Every time a spiritual strength spring appears, several king step monster beasts will be created. Their strength is terrifying to the extreme. When Su Jiao returned to the commander's office, it was already 2 hours later. The news has already been passed down. All the hunting squads that went out are on their way back. This time, we discovered the spiritual strength spring in a timely manner, so there shouldn't be any problems. The commander nodded. He rubbed his temples, a bit tired. Even so, after the spiritual strength spring appears, the new king step monster beasts that will appear will be enough to give us a headache. Su Jiao solemnly said, "With our strength, it is impossible for us to hunt down a massive number of king step monster beasts. At a suitable time, you must request assistance from the army." The commander was silent for several breaths of time. Then, he suddenly frowned. "Did you inform Qin Yu?" Su Jiao's face stiffened. Although he has the right to hunt alone, he doesn't have the qualifications to apply for a satellite handphone, so I didn't inform him directly. However, this is Qin Yu's first time at the camp, so he should be adapting to the environment. As long as he is on the mountain, he will naturally know about the spiritual strength spring and won't recklessly rush in. The commander nodded. "Go and warn him that the spiritual strength spring is no trifling matter. He must not go out to hunt during this time." Su Jiao respectfully nodded. He turned and left, a dignified look in his eyes. It seemed that this Qin Yu definitely had something on him that the commander valued highly. Otherwise, why would he pay so much attention to a mere nascent soul? As he thought of this, he quickened his pace. For Su Jiao to become the closest advisor to the commander, besides his own strength and wisdom, he was also very considerate and reliable. But soon, Su Jiao's complexion darkened. Qin Yu wasn't at his dwelling. He checked the transmission records and found that before the spiritual strength spring sounded, he had already entered the wilderness. Su Jiao bitterly smiled. Although this couldn't be blamed on him, if something were to happen to someone the commander valued so highly, he would also be implicated. Not daring to delay any longer, Su Jiao hurried back. After the commander received his reply, he frowned in silence. Su Jiao probingly said, "Commander, should we send someone to look for him?" The commander shook his head. "As the commander, I cannot allow others to take risks for Qin Yu. Perhaps this is a calamity in his life. Let's see his good fortune." Su Jiao nodded. Regret flashed in his eyes. Since this Qin Yu was valued by the commander, he was sure to have great achievements in the future. Unfortunately, his luck was too poor. He had actually entered the wilderness when the spiritual strength spring appeared. He feared he wouldn't be able to survive this calamity. Wang Yuanan was pleasantly surprised. "What did you say?" "Qin Yu entered the wilderness." "Is this news reliable?" The subordinate smiled. "Originally, we shouldn't have been able to inquire about this, but Counselor Su checked Qin Yu's transmission records. He did indeed enter the wilderness not too long ago." "Ha, good, this is too good." Wang Yuanan laughed. Qin Yu, this time you brought about your own death. I wish you an incomparably painful death." Bang! With a loud collision, Qin Yu was sent tumbling backwards. His chest had been torn open by sharp claws and dark red blood gushed out, soaking his robes. He gasped for breath. He couldn't be bothered to collect the monster beast corpses that fell to the ground. Instead, he rapidly retreated. Several breaths of time after Qin Yu left, 4 great wolves appeared where the battle had taken place. They lowered their heads and sniffed the corpses of their companions before emitting angry howls. Their thick hind legs broke through the earth. The 4 great wolves chased after Qin Yu. Their strong bodies smashed through ancient trees, breaking them apart. Rumble rumble, looking down from the skies, it was like an earth dragon had appeared on the ground, roaring into the distance. Qin Yu lifted a hand and pointed a finger. The 5 element swords flew out, circling around like a vortex. In the blink of an eye, they cut open an extremely deep hole in the stone wall. With a flick of his sleeves, he cut off a section of the stone and used magic power to shatter it into powder. Then, Qin Yu rushed into the hole and used the remaining stones to block the entrance. He let out a deep breath. His aura rapidly vanished from sight, as if he had fused together with the mountain stone. Soon, the stone wall began to gently tremble. The 4 great wolves stopped outside the stone wall. They anxiously and angrily howled for a long time before they wildly galloped away. In the darkness, Qin Yu's taut heart finally relaxed. He bitterly smiled. It seemed he had underestimated the dangers of the wilderness. 2 hours later, his injuries gradually healed. Qin Yu reached out a hand and magic power shot out from his palm. He quietly shattered the stone wall and walked out from the hole. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu's complexion changed. There was a faint mist in the world. This wasn't water vapor, but pure spiritual strength condensed together. What had happened? In such a short period of time, the spiritual strength of the heavens and earth had become so rich? Before Qin Yu could think about it, his expression froze. Not too far away, he locked his eyes on a vine that grew around an ancient tree. Most of the vine had withered, but there was a flower that bloomed brightly, emitting a light fragrance in the wind. Withered vine flowers were necessary materials to refine the single energy essence restoring pill. Because the conditions for them to grow were harsh, the quantity produced was extremely low. They were considered a relatively precious spirit plant. He never thought his luck would be so good. Could this be considered surviving a calamity, but there would always be a reward. Within the primary pill collection, not only were there pill refinement rooms, but there was also an extremely detailed introduction to spirit plants. Chapter 284. Thousand Chance Grass, one of the main materials for the Sun Moon pill. Sunflower, an important auxiliary material for the Clear Sky pill. Red Rasher Mushroom, an essential spirit plant for the Blood Spirit pill. Almost every several hundred meters, a spirit plant would appear. Moreover, the quality was extremely high and the value was considerable. As Qin Yu was overjoyed, he was also a bit startled. Although he knew that the land of divinity and demons, because of the rich heaven and earth spiritual strength, would produce countless heavenly materials, he still didn't think it would reach such an astonishing degree. The sudden rich heaven and earth spiritual strength and the sudden increase in precious spirit plants, although all of this seemed wonderful, there was a strange and unsettling feeling to it. Suddenly, Chinyu stopped picking the blue heart fruit in front of him. His body tensed, and in the next moment, a powerful strength erupted. His entire body moved several meters to the side, avoiding the black shadow that shot towards him. The black shadow landed on the ground. It was a strange snake covered in black scales with a protruding head. Its pupils glared at Chinyu, its eyes cold and gloomy. Chinyu's scalp tingled and the hairs on his back stood up. He didn't doubt that if he hadn't retreated a step faster and been bitten by this strange snake, the result would have been terrible. Without hesitation, Chinyu flicked his sleeves. Sword light howled out, cutting the strange snake in half. His expression relaxed. It seemed that although this strange snake was astonishingly fast, it wasn't too strong. Facing the 5-element swords, its defense was also incomparably weak. But in the next moment, Chinyu's complexion darkened. His eyes widened in shock. On the ground, the strange snake that had been cut in half didn't die. Rather, it crazily twisted about. The flesh and blood where it was cut off wriggled, and in several blinks of an eye, it regrew. Thus, 2 identical strange snakes appeared in front of Chinyu. 4 icy cold eyes stared at them, causing a chill to rise from the depths of one's heart. Whoosh, whoosh, the strange snakes leapt up. Chinyu drew back. Sword light cut through space, cutting them apart once more. Then, the scene from before repeated itself. The 4 strange snakes slightly swung their tails, locking onto Chinyu. What kind of monster is this? Chinyu paled. He began to realize that if this continued, he would only encounter greater trouble. Chinyu stepped forwards and stormed backwards. But the 4 strange snakes didn't let him go. Their speed was astonishing as they stubbornly chased after Chinyu. They leapt up, approaching him like a bolt of black silk. They opened their mouths at astonishing angles and the stench of blood filled the air. With a muffled sound, the strange snake seemed to have been struck by a sledgehammer. Its body exploded in the air, and a large amount of flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Chinyu's pupils shrank. He could see the tumbling flesh and blood wildly regenerate in midair. By the time they fell to the ground, they had already turned into strange snakes with incomplete bodies. Moreover, he knew very well that these strange snakes would soon grow completely. Bang! Blood-red flames ignited. The blood escape art was activated and Chinyu's speed rose by 10 times. He was like a blood-red meteor, dragging a tail of flames behind him as he hurtled into the distance. He couldn't hesitate any longer. Otherwise, once the number of strange snakes surpassed the limit he could deal with, there was a chance he would be bitten by a snake at any time. Hiss! Hiss! The monstrous snakes hissed with unwillingness, their cries echoing out from behind them. They burst forth with even greater speed, but in the face of the blood escape art, they were thrown further and further away until they could no longer be heard. But before Chinyu could relax, a bitter smile appeared in his eyes. In order to avoid the crazy attacks of the strange snakes, he had to use the blood escape art to escape. In this wilderness, he recklessly revealed the aura of a cultivator. It was like a blazing bonfire in the middle of a dark night, attracting the attention of a massive number of monster beasts. At this time, within the range of his divine sense, he could feel several tyrannical auras wildly rushing towards him. Without any time to catch his breath, Chinyu fiercely changed directions in midair and forcefully broke through a gap in the encirclement of 2 monster beasts. But as time passed, more and more monster beasts were alarmed. The encirclement that surrounded Chinyu became increasingly tight and impenetrable. Even though the blood escape art was extremely fast, he still encountered danger several times. There were even several times when he was just a hair's breadth away from the fangs and claws of the monster beasts. Qin Yu was anxious. If things continued like this, sooner or later he wouldn't be able to dodge in time. Moreover, the blood escape art relied on the power of his blood vitality to activate. No matter how powerful his mortal body was, it was impossible for him to maintain it forever. What to do? What to do? At this time, Qin Yu suddenly felt an intense fluctuation of aura coming from a certain direction, as if two powerful life forms were fighting each other. In this life or death moment, he didn't have time to think. His body subconsciously responded. Bang! The blood-red flames suddenly became much richer. After adjusting their direction, they shot straight towards the source of the fluctuations of aura. Qin Yu's divine sense erupted with all its might, covering his entire body as he closely watched the movements of the surrounding monster beasts. Suddenly, Qin Yu frowned. He discovered that no matter what he did, he couldn't break out of this encirclement unscathed. There were two monster beasts at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. One of them would definitely collide with him. Without any time to think, Qin Yu lifted a hand and thrust it forwards. The five-element swords all appeared. As they circled, countless sword lights gushed out, rumbling like waves of sword light. Roar! The monster beast at 11 o'clock emitted a pained roar. Its body was submerged in sword light and countless wounds opened up, blood gushing out. However, its fearlessness towards death also posed a danger to Qin Yu. Its sharp claws collided with the sword light, emitting the sound of metal colliding. Sparks flew in all directions as the claws fell onto Qin Yu's chest. The robes issued by the beast hunting battalion caused the claws to pause for a moment. Then, they were cut apart, revealing a second set of robes underneath. The formidable defensive capabilities of the demon god armor were proven once more. Although there was still blood gushing out, the wounds that weren't too deep soon began to heal due to its powerful regenerative abilities. Qin Yu's complexion paled. He rushed out of the monster beast's encirclement. Several ancient trees in front of him were suddenly uprooted by a powerful strength and twisted into powder in midair, scattering down to the ground. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes and allowed the wild strength to attack him. He held his head in his hands and curled up into a ball. Then, like a stone, he smashed into it. It was like he was in an underground river. The wild impacts and collisions caused Qin Yu's complexion to pale. Blood flowed out from the corners of his lips before he was shaken away. Paw! As he fell to the ground, Qin Yu fiercely looked up. He could finally see the situation on the battlefield. A blood-red winged leopard swept its icy eyes over him. Qin Yu stiffened. He could clearly feel the arrogance and contempt in its eyes. And the one fighting with it was actually a human woman. Her face was covered with a veil, but her exquisite and tall figure still exuded a soul-stirring aura. At this time, behind the veil, her eyebrows furrowed imperceptibly. The woman flicked her sleeves and great waves rose up in the void. These were true waves that could be seen with the naked eye. They swept out in all directions. Qin Yu's pupils violently shrank. He didn't doubt that these void waves that brushed past him were enough to instantly grind him to powder. Behind him, the monster beasts that were chasing him all roared out in alarm and panic. But in the face of these crashing waves, they simply didn't have time to dodge. Bang! Bang! The monster beasts, whether they were massive or heroic, exploded in midair, blooming like dark red flowers. The might of a single wave was terrifying to the extreme. And at this time, the blood-red winged leopard's eyes flashed with a cold light. It flapped its wings and turned into a beam of light as it hurtled towards the woman. The veiled female cultivator lifted her hand and slapped out. Although her movements weren't too fast, in the blink of an eye she blocked the leopard's vicious attack. There was a heaven-shaking explosion. Wild strength swept out and a massive portion of the ground was torn apart. Countless giant fissures spread outwards like a terrifying spider web. If you don't want to die, then leave. An icy cold voice echoed in his ears. Chin-yu felt his chest tighten and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying away by the shock waves of the collision. He stumbled to the ground. Without any time to catch his breath, he pushed off into the distance. Behind him, loud rumbling sounds rang out without end. The earth beneath his feet trembled. It was clear that a life-or-death battle had erupted between the two sides. The winged leopard and veiled female cultivator both had peak divine soul cultivations. Their terrifying strength was far from what Chin-yu could compare with. If he didn't escape quickly and was sucked into the battle, he feared his life would be in danger within a breath of time. A moment later, the terrifying killing aura gradually vanished from sight. Chin-yu stopped and took advantage of this time to adjust his breathing. He had already discovered the changes in the wilderness. As the heaven and earth spiritual strength became richer, the number of monster beasts also increased. And it wasn't just a little bit. Damn it, just what was happening here? At this time, Chin-yu's eyelids fiercely jumped. He looked up to see that above his head, the canopies of several ancient trees had been shattered. Then, a pair of shining claws came clawing at him. The 5-element swords appeared at the same time. Radiant sword light protected Chin-yu within. In the next moment, the sharp claws ruthlessly struck the sword light. The surface of the sword light instantly caved in and the speed at which it flowed rapidly rose, but it wasn't broken. Even so, the might of this claw still caused damage to Chin-yu. He was already injured to begin with. Now he spat out a mouthful of blood and his field of vision darkened. With an angry cry, the golden eagle soared into the skies. Its wings spread out for over 10 meters, casting a massive shadow over the ground. Its sharp eyes locked onto Chin-yu, revealing burning heat, greed, and anger. Human cultivators hunted down monster beasts and obtained their fur, bones, inner cores, and even flesh and blood. These could be used to refine all sorts of magic tools. Similarly, to monster beasts, human cultivators that contained a massive amount of heaven and earth spiritual strength were also great supplements. In particular, Chin-yu had cultivated the demon body and his mortal body and blood vitality were incomparably powerful. He also had the 5-element nascent souls in his Dantian Sea, thus he had attracted the attention of this powerful golden eagle. It hadn't cared too much just now, but it never imagined that a weak human cultivator would be able to avoid its pursuit. Bang! The golden eagle's aura rose. It folded its wings and shot straight towards Chin-yu like an arrow. Before it arrived, its tyrannical aura was like the might of the heavens and earth, destroying several ancient trees and causing the ground to crack apart. Chin-yu paled. He couldn't rely on the 5-element swords to block it. He bit down on the tip of his tongue to maintain his clarity of mind. Then, he lifted a hand towards the skies. A finger stirred up winds and clouds. A finger moved the boundless blue. The first of the blue fingers, boundless blue finger. Bang! It was like the world itself was collapsing. Wild strength invaded his body. Chin-yu spat out several mouthfuls of blood and turned to flee. Chapter 285. Beneath the golden eagle's massive body was a soul that didn't match up. Simply put, it was petty and vengeful. If it suffered a loss, it would definitely take revenge. Moreover, Chin-yu's aura was incomparably tempting to it, it couldn't let go no matter what. Thus, the result was that Chin-yu was running for his life like a wild wolf. Chased by the golden eagle, Chin-yu didn't have time to think too much. He ran further and further away, deeper and deeper into the wilderness. He didn't discover that the recovery speed of his injuries had increased. This was because the richness of the surrounding spiritual strength had reached a mind-boggling degree. After avoiding the golden eagle's sharp claws once more, Chinyu paid the price of lacerating his back as he tumbled through the intertwining vines. But these withered vines that seemed as if they were nearing the end of their lives awoke from their deep slumber as soon as they were stained with his blood. The dry and fragile vines suddenly tightened. They were like steel ropes that tightly wound around Chinyu's body. At the same time, the rough surface of the vines bulged and ruptured. Tiny thorns drilled out and ruthlessly stabbed into Chinyu's body. Gulp, gulp, the sound of great gulping caused one's scalp to tingle, as if they had fallen into an icy lake. The vines instantly became crispy. Rich green light flowed around them, emitting a boundless aura of life. It was beautiful. The formidable golden eagle screeched in anger. It fiercely flapped its wings. Strong winds condensed into blue blades that slashed at the crispy vines. At the same time, the five-element sword light erupted like a volcano, twisting all the thorns that drilled into Chinyu's body into powder. Chinyu's figure shrank. The moment he fell to the ground, he shot out like a cannonball. Countless vines emitted sharp howls. As the sound entered his ears, it was like iron nails piercing into his mind. Chinyu staggered and continued to run. The golden eagle's massive body fell to the ground. It immediately regained consciousness and flapped its wings in an attempt to fly up. But at this time, with the sound of whistling wind, vines shot up into the skies, wrapping around the golden eagle's body. Towards this golden eagle that had caused it to lose its prey, the vampiric vine had an incomparable hatred for it. It naturally wouldn't allow it to escape so easily. Shrill cries rang out again and again. Golden feathers fluttered down like snowflakes. Fragments of vines wildly shot out, accumulating into a thick layer on the ground. The golden rays were like the sun leaping out of the horizon. Billions of golden arrows tore the countless vines to shreds. The golden eagle broke free, looking extremely miserable. Its dazzling golden feathers were much dimmer than before. Suddenly flapping its wings, the golden eagle chased in the direction of Chinyu's escape. As an excellent representative of the narrow-minded monster, after suffering such a big loss, how could it let Chinyu go? It had to eat this human cultivator to make up for its loss. The chase continued. Facing the golden eagle that was like maggots in his bones, there was simply no way for him to escape. This beast seemed to have some special method that could lock onto his aura. No matter how well he hid, he would still be discovered. Suddenly, Chinyu seemed to hear the sound of trickling water in his ears. This sound wasn't strong, but it seemed to carry with it a strength that drew in one's heart, causing one to unconsciously look over. Thus, a pool of spring water appeared in front of Chinyu without warning. Moreover, what was most surprising was that this spring water gushed out from a large stone on the ground. It didn't flow to the ground, but floated in the air, tumbling about. The verdant spring water seemed to flow like the purest and most transparent jade in the world. Within his Dantian sea, the five-element nascent souls shined with light. Just looking at it caused Chinyu to instinctively feel an intense desire. His soul sensed that this wasn't spring water at all, but was clearly formed from endless heaven and earth spiritual strength gathered together. This was true flowing spirit spring water. Every drop contained an incomparably pure and potent spiritual strength. The surrounding ancient trees bent down. Strong winds roused Chinyu from his stupor. He looked up and saw a scene that nearly froze his soul. The golden eagle rushed forwards. Its wings stirred up blue wind blades that filled the skies, flooding every corner of the world. It was enough to destroy everything in front of it. But just as this attack was about to arrive, it froze in midair. The endless blue wind blades all disintegrated. The golden eagle screamed out in panic. The golden feathers on its body erupted with a brilliant divine light, as if they were blazing flames. But it only had time to raise its wings before its chest was pierced through by a bone spike. Golden, boiling lava-like blood gushed out of the wound and spilled onto the ground, burning fiercely. It was only at this time that the ear-piercing screech that caused endless fear to rise up from the depths of one's soul, finally arrived. Qin didn't know what sort of life form had managed to kill the terrifying golden eagle from so far away. But, he knew that this other party had the strength to easily erase him. Rumble rumble, there was a deep rumbling sound, like thunder roaring in the distance. Even though the space it crossed became blurry and faint, one could still feel the terrifying strength contained within. The fallen leaves on the ground, the towering trees, and even the entire earth began to gently tremble. Qin Yu looked up. In the distant horizon, a shadow was howling towards him. His complexion paled and his body stiffened. He stared helplessly at the shadow that stirred up the winds and clouds as it approached. The entire wilderness fell deathly silent. All the monster beasts widened their eyes in panic. They crawled on the ground, their bodies shivering. Qin Yu fiercely bit down on the tip of his tongue and forcefully extricated himself from this terrifying atmosphere. He stepped forwards and his body was like a stone as he smashed into the spring water on the boulder. Puff, Qin Yu's figure vanished from sight. Several breaths of time later, the towering ancient trees trembled and turned to powder, swept up by a formidable strength and sent flying in all directions. The ground shook and cracked open. Countless cracks spread out into the distance until they were covered by the falling shadow, vanishing from sight. The golden eagle's crimson flesh was exposed as if it had no skin at all. Thick blood vessels bulged out and one could clearly see the blood flowing through them. From the neck all the way down to the tailbone, 12 thick bone spikes jutted out from the entire spine. They were pale white, as if there were a trillion evil spirits lingering around them. Just looking at them would cause the wails of the dead to echo in one's soul. If Qin Yu were here, he would know just who killed the golden eagle. This was because the bone spike near the tailbone was fresh and broken. This strange and formidable monster beast's eyes fell on the spirit spring, revealing a mocking expression. This humble and weak human cultivator actually dared to try and obtain its own strength. He was simply overestimating himself to the extreme. At this time, he was likely withstanding unimaginable pain. His mortal body was slowly collapsing and the spiritual strength contained in his flesh and blood was slowly fusing into the spirit spring. Finally, with the help of the spirit spring, he was able to complete the perfect blood sacrifice. All of this was far more perfect than he had imagined. Time slowly passed. A look of surprise appeared in the monster beast's eyes. The human cultivator that it sensed was as weak as an ant actually hadn't died yet. It seemed that his strength was far greater than he had imagined. But even so, this would only cause him to suffer more pain. The final result wouldn't change. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. The monster beast stomped on the ground, its tail impatiently sweeping about. 4 minutes. 5 minutes. 6 minutes. The monster beast took a deep breath. It fiercely inhaled, causing the air to hiss. 7 minutes. 8 minutes. 9 minutes. The monster beast stuck out its tongue and licked its scarlet lips. Its eyes were ice cold, nearly freezing over. 10 minutes. Roar, with a loud roar, the silence of the wilderness was torn to shreds. The monster beast's thick red tail crazily lashed out at the spirit spring. There was a heaven-shaking explosion and space twisted. With a pained roar, the monster beast's giant body was sent flying away. It tumbled to the ground, creating a terrifying trench in its wake. Its eyes widened as it stubbornly stared at the spirit spring. Even now, it was still in a state of disbelief. A human so weak that it could easily kill him with a single claw, had actually obtained the recognition of the spirit spring and seized the good fortune that should have belonged to it. It told itself countless times that this was impossible. But when it opened its eyes and closed them again and again, the spirit spring was still there, without the slightest change. The monster beast reared its head back and roared. Its cruel aura swept out for 10,000 feet. Within this range, everything was destroyed, turned to powder by a terrifying strength. It stubbornly stared at the spirit spring. After an unknown period of time, it finally accepted the situation in front of it. But this didn't mean that it would give up on this opportunity to change its destiny that it had experienced countless slaughters. It had no idea what despicable method that human cultivator had used to obtain the recognition of the spirit spring. But with his cultivation, how many benefits could he obtain from it? Once this person came out, it would swallow him and absorb the rest of the spirit spring. Then, it could still transform into a monster king. However, as it thought about how it would inevitably lose a portion of its spiritual strength, the monster beast's heart trembled with hatred. It clenched its jaws so hard that it nearly broke its teeth. Bang! Its giant body lay flat on the ground, its body tensed. As long as that human cultivator stepped out from the spirit spring, he would welcome its all-destroying wrath. The great and noble Lord Achilles wanted this lowly human to understand what a terrifying and foolish mistake it was to anger him. The strange fluctuations of heaven and earth's spiritual strength that formed a spiritual spring was the greatest lucky chance of its life for the monster beast race. The rich heaven and earth spiritual strength and the massive amount of heavenly materials that appeared with it could cause their strength to rapidly rise in a short period of time. And the most precious of all were the large and small spirit springs. To monster beasts, spirit springs represented infinite good fortune. As long as they could withstand the terrifying spiritual strength they contained, they could be reborn in a short period of time. And of these spirit springs, the most precious one was called the Monster King's Spirit Spring. It was the highest grade of spirit springs. Only the most powerful existence in the monster beast race had the qualifications to swallow it and use its strength to complete the final transformation, becoming an omnipotent monster king that could call the wind and summon the rain. For instance, this spirit spring that Chinyu had entered. With a human's talent, it was originally impossible for them to withstand the impact of a monster king's spirit spring. Just touching it for a moment would cause their bodies to explode and they would die. Because of this powerful monster beast that was just a step away from becoming a monster king had ignored the incomparably weak ant in its eyes. But what it didn't know was that this weak ant was called Chinyu. Although he wasn't too strong, he possessed all sorts of inconceivable methods. For instance, the demon body. For instance, the 5-element nascent souls. For instance, the little blue lamp that had settled on the great Tao base. So, it was doomed to suffer a loss, a great loss. Within the spirit spring, Chinyu's eyes were tightly closed. His body was curled up, gently shaking from time to time. Turbulent heaven and earth spiritual strength crazily drilled into his body through his pores. A portion was directly absorbed by his mortal body, causing every inch of his flesh and blood to become tougher. A portion gathered in his Dantian Sea, dividing into 5 and pouring into his 5-element nascent souls. Within the great Tao base, faint traces of blue light flashed on the surface of the little blue lamp. It didn't show the slightest interest in this inconceivably rich heaven and earth spiritual strength. Rather, it played a crucial role in stabilizing Chinyu's body, limiting the heaven and earth spiritual strength that entered his body to a limit that he could withstand. Chinyu felt as if he had just experienced an incomparably long dream, one that was both sad and happy. In this dream, he felt as if he had fallen into a deep sea, surrounded by raging undercurrents. As he passed through the dark and icy cold, the insides of his body seemed to be burning with raging flames. His consciousness was hazy, so Chinyu didn't know what sort of heaven-defying good fortune he had inadvertently snatched away. The monster beast that was guarding outside had dark clouds in its heart. So when it discovered that another human had rushed in, its monstrous anger instantly erupted. What? Do you all think I'm easy to bully? One wasn't enough, and now a second one came. With a loud roar, countless blood-red runes appeared on the surface of the monster beast's body. They emitted a brilliant blood-red light that condensed into armor. The originally fierce monster beast suddenly transformed into the most terrifying killing machine in the world. Bang! The ground violently trembled and immediately collapsed, forming a terrifying pit. The monster beast's massive body was astonishingly fast. It shot into the skies like a mountain and then came crashing down. A fair and delicate hand reached out. Beneath the massive shadow, it was as fragile as a newly bloomed flower bud. But such a hand was actually able to withstand the monster beast's violent attack. A figure flew backwards like a leaf. She spat out a mouthful of blood, dyeing her veil red. The female cultivator fell to the ground. Every step she took left behind a deep footprint and tiny cracks spread outwards. The monster beast swayed. Its dazed head locked onto the female cultivator once more. It was even more certain that this human woman was with that boy from before. Otherwise, in the wilderness where spiritual strength surged, human cultivators would have no time to hide. How could there be such a coincidence that two people would appear in front of it? And one of them was such a fierce master. Did she want to rescue that damned bastard boy? Dream on. The monster beast opened its mouth. Crimson flames as red as blood surged out like a broken dam, gushing out. The earth instantly melted beneath these flames, forming some sort of glass-like crystal. The temperature between the heavens and earth began to wildly rise. Behind the veil, the female cultivator's eyes brightened. They were like the most dazzling stars in the night sky. She lifted a hand and her aura suddenly changed. She was like a shadow that existed between the heavens and earth, but was impossible to sense. In the next moment, this faintly discernible temperament suddenly vanished. An incomparably formidable aura erupted from her body, as if 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers were contained within her. She lifted a jade hand and slapped forwards. This slap was made by the veiled female cultivator. It contained the strength of 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers within her body. With a heaven-shaking rumble, it was as if the heavens and earth were overturned. The flames that the monster beast spat out were split apart. Its eyes widened in shock. As it looked at the female cultivator, its gaze turned blazing hot. It suddenly discovered that losing the spirit spring might not be a disaster. Instead, it would bring it more opportunities. For instance, this human female cultivator in front of it. Chapter 286. The raging flames were as red as blood. As they burned, they destroyed all. The earth beneath them and all around them were burned into nothingness. The veiled woman's eyes grew increasingly bright. But within this dazzling brilliance, there was also a deep weariness. She hadn't been able to control it to begin with. Now that she had forcefully unsealed her powerful cultivation and erupted with it, there was a backlash on her. If she didn't stop, then after a moment, she wouldn't even need the monster beast to attack. Her soul would collapse and she would die. But if she stopped now, the heaven-burning karmic fire would be enough to burn her to ashes in the blink of an eye. Deep in the veiled woman's eyes, a decisive light flashed. Since she couldn't escape this great calamity today, then she would bring this monster beast to the yellow springs with her. A Tao pattern slowly appeared between her eyebrows. It was extremely faint, but the moment it appeared, it was like an invisible mountain had appeared in the world. An invisible and boundless pressure flooded every inch of the world. The monster beast's eyes revealed shock and anger. It roared out loud and the armor on its body that was formed from blood-red runes began to thicken at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its giant body lay flat on the ground. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a giant blood-red stone. Blood-red runes wove across the surface of the stone, forming a net. The veiled female cultivator lifted her slender jade finger and gently touched the point between her eyebrows. It was like a door had been opened and pure white light flowed out like water, gathering at her fingertip. One could faintly make out thousands of tiny runes within this white light. They danced up and down as if they had a mind of their own, constantly combining and separating. It was like the endless changing clouds in the horizon, with infinite possibilities and infinite transformations within them. With the point of her finger, the pure white light condensed into a beam that pierced through the heaven-burning karmic fire and extinguished it. It fell straight onto the monster beast's body. The blood-red stone trembled and countless cracks appeared on its surface. They spread out like a spider web through every corner of the stone, constantly invading it. With a light rustling sound, blood-red powder sprinkled down. The stone became smaller and smaller, gradually revealing the monster beast's body. Then, wounds began to tear open on its body, dripping with blood. Roar, the monster beast roared in pain. On its spine, a fierce bone spike suddenly self-detonated, as if it were venting out the destructive strength within its body. The speed at which the wounds on its body increased began to slow down. But this clearly wasn't enough. As a result, the second and third bone spikes exploded, causing the beast's eyes to turn dim, and its aura to weaken significantly. It was clear that by detonating 3 of its bone spikes, although it had managed to resist the attack of the terrifying pure white light, it had also paid an extremely heavy price. However, compared to the harvests, the price was worth it. The Tao mark between the veiled female cultivator's eyebrows vanished. She seemed to have lost the last of her essence, energy, and divine sense. She slumped to the ground. Hoo, the demonic beast panted heavily as it stared fixedly at her. Its tongue licked the corner of its mouth greedily. If there were no accidents, it might be able to reach the king realm by devouring the veiled woman's bloodline power. Unfortunately, the beast's luck today was not that good. Just as it was about to open its mouth, the spirit spring behind it suddenly began to ripple. Then, a burst of power suddenly erupted. Formless waves surged in the air as the demonic beast roared in grief and indignation. Its body was like a giant ball as it was sent flying. It wanted to know just what it had done wrong to have such a rough day. It turned its head and looked at the dissipating spirit spring and the figure that was gradually becoming clear. Its eyes erupted with a monstrous killing intent. That damned human junior. Bang, the ground collapsed. The demonic beast rushed forwards, its sharp claws shining with a cold light. It wasn't that it had lost its mind due to anger, but rather that it couldn't be disturbed while swallowing a powerful bloodline. Since this human boy had jumped out, he had to die first. Shua, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. A divine light flashed within them. He lifted his palm and a bronze mirror appeared, shooting out a beam of light that struck the demonic beast. Its body stiffened, and its eyes were filled with shock. However, no matter how hard it struggled, it was unable to move. Speaking of which, this demonic beast's luck was truly pitiful to the extreme. Ever since Qin Yu obtained this bronze mirror spirit treasure from a nascent soul ruin, he had never been able to obtain its true recognition. But today, after stepping into the spirit spring and borrowing the endless spiritual strength of the heavens and earth, he finally awakened the spirit of the bronze mirror, allowing it to possess the might of a true spirit treasure. This beam of light was called the soul-setting divine light. It directly targeted the soul. After striking it, the soul would be frozen solid. No matter how transcendent one's magic power was, it would be difficult to use even the slightest bit of it. Moreover, the most tyrannical aspect of the soul-setting divine light was that it ignored its target's cultivation. As long as one was struck, their soul would be frozen solid. Of course, depending on the strength of the soul, the amount of time the soul-setting divine light could be frozen would also increase or decrease. Qin Yu didn't hesitate at all. The moment the demonic beast froze, his figure suddenly approached. Then, a dazzling blood-red light bloomed in the void. A terrifying hole appeared on the demonic beast's chest. Qin Yu seemed to sense something. He thrust his palm into the wound and forcefully pulled out a crystal-like object. This object was the size of a chicken egg and was oval in shape. Its entire body was crimson and there seemed to be raging flames burning within. Roar! The demonic beast emitted a pained roar. Its eyes widened, filled with unwillingness and disbelief. It never imagined that it would die, and that it would die at the hands of such a weak human ant. An incomparably cruel aura erupted from the demonic beast's body like a volcano. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He drew backwards and grabbed onto the veiled female cultivator. Without hesitation, he used the blood escape art and fled like a bolt of blood-red lightning. Several breaths of time later, there was an earth-shaking explosion behind him. An unimaginably terrifying strength swept out in all directions like a tide. Vines, trees, rocks, and even space itself were completely destroyed beneath this strength. A bottomless pit appeared in the ground. Qin Yu tightly held onto the female cultivator in his arms, covering her completely. His body shook and he spat out a mouthful of blood, wetting the veil on her face. He staggered and continued to flee. But at this moment, a sense of fear rose in his heart. He turned his head and saw that in the skies above the terrifying explosion, there was a hideous blood-red beast head. 13 fierce fangs were bared and its eyes were stubbornly staring at Qin Yu and the female cultivator in his arms. As if it were only an illusion, the beast head phantom trembled and vanished from sight. But the fear in Qin Yu's heart didn't subside. Instead, it made him feel even more desperate for points. Cough, cough, it's the monster beast curse. The female cultivator in his arms spoke with difficulty, as if she were disgusted by her blood-soaked veil. She lifted a hand and pulled it off, revealing an extremely beautiful and pale face. But what didn't match her exquisite face was a faint arrogance that filled her eyes. At this time, she curled her lips, revealing a bit of helplessness. Qin Yu quietly said, "What is the monster beast curse?" The female cultivator glanced at him. After a moment of surprise, she immediately understood. So it's just a melon egg that doesn't know anything. No wonder you still dare to rush into the wilderness at this time. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with impatience. At this time, there was no meaning in chatting. The female cultivator seemed to sense his dissatisfaction. She lightly coughed. The monster beast curse is only triggered when a high-level monster beast dies in an extremely painful and unwilling manner. It is an incomparably terrifying curse strength. With the place where the curse appears as the center, all monster beasts for 1,000 miles will obey its will after death. They will chase down the life that killed it regardless of the cost. Qin Yu's complexion paled. Normally, the wilderness was already incomparably dangerous, much less at this time. Monster beasts for 1,000 miles were chasing after them. It was impossible to escape. Suddenly, within his divine sense, he sensed the aura of a monster beast rapidly approaching. Qin Yu stepped forward and his figure changed directions, avoiding this monster beast and continuing to flee. This monster beast wasn't too strong. Qin Yu was confident he could kill it, but this would inevitably delay him. Even if it was only for several breaths of time, Qin Yu wasn't willing to do so. This was because once he stopped, there was a chance he would fall into the encirclement of a massive number of monster beasts. Run! Run! Blood-red flames blazed on the surface of Qin Yu's body. He had already stimulated the blood escape art to the limit. But soon, he realized just how terrifying the monster beast curse was. Within his divine sense, he could sense the dense aura of monster beasts all around him. Moreover, several of these auras were so strong that they left him in a difficult situation. Even with the blood escape art, he still couldn't escape them. Chinyu bitterly smiled. He had no idea that killing that monster beast would cause such trouble. Moreover, the key point was that he hadn't planned on killing it to begin with. He had only casually taken out a crystal from its chest, he hadn't even touched its inner core. Was it really necessary to be so cruel as to blow itself up? Moreover, it had even given birth to a monster beast curse. The female cultivator in his arms lightly said, "The crystal you stole is the source of the heaven-burning karmic flames. If that bloodthirsty monster beast lost its crystal, the heaven-burning karmic flames in its body would erupt. If it blew itself up, there is a chance that it will drag you down with it. That is still better than being burnt to ashes by the heaven-burning karmic flames. As for the monster beast curse, who can you blame for your poor character?" In this hopeless situation where life and death hung on a thin line, this sort of light tone was grating on the ears. Chinyu lowered his head and glared at this woman. If she continued to spout nonsense like this, he would toss her aside and run away. The female cultivator sneered. "If you toss me aside, you won't be able to escape." She swept her eyes around and pointed a finger. "That direction isn't too far from my transmission array. If we rush through it, we can return to the camp alive." As he thought, she was also someone from the beast hunting battalion. Moreover, she was a shrewd and astute woman who was skilled in observing others. But right now, Chinyu wasn't in the mood to think about these things. His eyes erupted with a brilliant light. Transmission array, this woman, why didn't she say anything before? If he had run in the wrong direction, wouldn't he have died? After several more thoughts, Chinyu took a deep breath. He stepped forwards and exploded forwards. After avoiding the several monster beasts in front of him, Chinyu's complexion became dignified. This was because he could only force his way forwards. Roar, with a roar, a blue storm wolf appeared. This was a commonly seen monster beast in the wilderness. Its strength wasn't too outstanding, but it was a monster beast that no beast hunter wished to encounter. This was because they usually didn't move alone. Once they did, there was bound to be a wolf pack. That would be terrifying. And indeed, under Chinyu's gloomy gaze, a second and third storm wolf rushed out from the jungle. At a rough glance, there were over 30 of them. The female cultivator sneered, "Your character really is too poor." Paw, with a light sound, the woman's complexion stiffened. She immediately bared her fangs and brandished her claws, shaking as if her muscles were cramping. "You bastard, you dare to hit my butt. You're dead." Paw, Chinyu clenched his teeth. "Shut up." He lifted his hand and flipped the female cultivator onto his back. "Hold on tight, otherwise if you fall off, don't think I'll save you." Without waiting for the female cultivator to reply, Chinyu's figure rushed forwards, colliding with the wolf pack. Roar, roar, wolf howls rang out, mixed with pained howls. Blood splashed onto the ground and the smell of blood filled the air. Chapter 287. In such a short period of time, this fellow's strength had risen at an astonishing rate. It seemed that he had obtained many harvests from the spirit spring. Thinking of this, the female cultivator's expression became even stranger. Since when could a human cultivator step into the spirit spring that was exclusive to monster beasts? Chinyu punched out his fist and forced back the formidable storm wolf. Another wound was added to his body, but it actually saved him a breath of time. He stepped on the ground and continued to run forwards. Terrifying strength tumbled around him, shattering everything in his way. Beneath the monster beast's curse, he and the female cultivator in his arms were like lights to the monster beasts. Since he couldn't hide his tracks, he might as well rush forwards. More monster beasts appeared in front of him. These were several even more astonishing black bears. As they ran forwards, the ground rumbled and shook. Without pausing at all, they began to slaughter each other. Gotcha, Qin Yu's chest caved in. It was unknown just how many bones were broken by the black bear's claws. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood before he felt his chest become a little smoother. Of course, the big fellow across from him was in an even worse state. Its originally mighty and majestic head was now bent backwards at an exaggerated angle. Its neck had been crushed and its massive body crashed to the ground. What a waste. Just how many points would that have cost? A faint sigh sounded out from behind him. Qin Yu's lips twitched. His hands that were holding onto her tight legs moved, but in the end he didn't raise them. The female cultivator arched an eyebrow. What, have you taken enough advantage of me? Qin Yu had a helpless expression. Big sister, aren't you afraid of dying? The female cultivator's face stiffened. What did you call me? Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He didn't plan on replying. He lifted her up and continued forwards. The female cultivator fell silent. She looked down at Qin Yu's bloodstained body and a trace of gentleness appeared in her eyes. This fellow, although he was a bit lecherous and a bit of a bastard, he still had some conscience. He knew that I was afraid of pain, so he didn't add any wounds to my body. But even if I wasn't injured, I probably wouldn't be able to last much longer. Rather than struggling at death's door, I might as well use up some of my remaining energy. At least a few monster beasts would be buried with me. Humph humph, I'm not being moved nor am I risking my life to save this bastard's life. In a bit, charge forward. Don't worry about the demonic beasts. No matter how many come, they'll all be mine, said the female cultivator coolly. Her voice had finally changed, and was no longer annoying. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He turned his head, but before he could say anything, he was slapped on the head. Don't waste time. Hurry up and rush forward. Hiya. I'm riding a horse, big sister. Qin Yu's feet buckled and he nearly fell to the ground. He took a deep breath and his heart began to race. Bang! Mud splattered in all directions. Every time he stepped on the ground, deep footprints would be left behind and cracks would spread in all directions. Qin Yu was like a boulder, bouncing on the ground as he raced forwards. Roar! The violent roars of monster beasts echoed in his ears. He could smell the stench from their bodies. Qin Yu lowered his head. He ignored everything around him, only running, running, running. Of course, this wasn't just because he trusted her words, but because he believed in his own eyes. A woman that could risk her life against two powerful monster beasts wasn't simple at all. Reality proved that Qin Yu's judgment was accurate. At this time, the woman behind him slightly straightened her back. Her soft chest stretched taut, revealing an enchanting curve. She looked down and revealed a helpless smile. He really was a lecherous man. But at this time, it wasn't worth bickering with him. She looked up and the faint helplessness in her eyes had completely vanished. All that was left was calm and tranquil. An aura called nobility began to flow out from her. It was like everything in her eyes was within her control. Prosperity and destruction existed in a single thought. She raised her hand and brushed it across her eyes. It was as if she was gently pulling back her hair, without the slightest hint of smoke or fire. In the air, a monster beast with short black fur suddenly froze in midair, like a frozen fish in water. In the next moment, this invisible freeze quietly disintegrated. Walala, pieces of the corpse fell to the ground, but not a single drop of blood flowed out. The cut was as smooth as a mirror and as red as blood jade. It was as if this demonic beast, which had been extremely ferocious just a moment ago, was formed from some sort of crystal. Of course, it wasn't just this monster beast with exquisite fur that died. Crashing sounds echoed out as Qin Yu ran forwards. It was like a hail of flesh and blood was raining down. Even the monster beasts that were driven here by the power of the curse felt fear at this time. The cruel killing intent in their eyes faded away and was replaced with awe. Respect for strength. Awe for strength. In the world of monster beasts, this was even more naked. A fierce tiger monster that was about to turn and leave suddenly cried out miserably. Its 20-foot-long body was sent flying away. A wound on its chest opened up and blood flowed out from its organs. It fell to the ground, howling in pain. It didn't seem like it would survive. The tall demon ape paused. Its claws were stained with blood. It howled and the surrounding monster beasts all revealed looks of fear. It rushed towards Chinyu once more. The female cultivator's eyes fell on the demon ape. There was no fear in her eyes, but rather a bit of interest and a bit of gratification. This sort of miraculous gaze caused a trace of coldness to arise in the heart of the devil ape that was renowned for its ruthlessness, bloodthirstiness, and peerlessly ferociousness. Then, it really did feel a cold chill. The demon ape's body tensed. Unsurprisingly, in the next moment, its giant body erupted with a strength that could tear apart all. But at this time, the demon ape gently shivered, as if it were shivering in a cold wind. Then, its tensed body shattered into countless pieces. They were still like ice crystals, bright red, but there was no blood flowing out. The female cultivator coughed several times. Her originally pale face lost even more color. She was like ice and snow, but now there was a soul-stirring beauty and nobility about her. It was unknown what method she used to kill the terrifyingly strong demon ape, but she had clearly paid a great price. But at this time, she actually smiled. On her pale face, this sudden smile was filled with a crazed demonic intent. Yet, it was also particularly moving. Chinyu revealed a helpless expression, but even more dignified one. He had seen with his own eyes that the female cultivator had fought with two powerful monster beasts and had suffered heavy wounds. To reveal such a terrifying strength at this time, she must have paid an equivalent price. Hearing the laughter behind him, as clear and melodious as a mountain spring, Chinyu's heart became a bit heavier. But at this time, he didn't turn around. Instead, he lowered his body even more and moved his legs, erupting with an even greater strength. This strength had already surpassed the limits of the demon body. His flesh, blood, muscles, and bones emitted faint cracking sounds, bringing with it a tearing pain. Chinyu remained silent, as if this pain wasn't occurring on his body at all. The female cultivator behind him arched an eyebrow. As she looked at Chinyu, her eyes became a bit more mellow. This fellow really did have a conscience. She was about to die and hadn't been taken advantage of by anyone before, so she might as well take advantage of him. This could be considered a rare act of kindness before she died. As she lay on Chinyu's back, her chest came into contact with his thick and broad back. The female cultivator furrowed her eyebrows and twisted around a few times, a bit uncomfortable. She thought that smelly men really weren't easy to use. How could he be as soft and fragrant as her lover? But this sort of rough taste, in this current environment, could at least calm her heart a bit. She let out a light breath and closed her eyes. Like this, she lay on Chinyu's back, as if she had fallen asleep. But all of the monster beasts that were torn apart were a constant reminder of just what sort of terrifying strength this sleeping woman was releasing. Chinyu forcefully stomped down. Along with the broken rocks, his calf bones also cracked open. But he didn't slow down at all. He smashed through the layers of vines, listening to the woman's weak and sloppy voice guide him forwards. She should be very tired. Her voice was weak and weak. Her mouth was very close to Chinyu's ear, so close that he could clearly feel her warm breathing, tickling his ear. Chinyu pursed his lips. He tore open the vines in front of him once more. Finally, he heard the woman's voice confirm, "It's here." What the vines covered was a bottomless black hole. The sound of howling wind came from within. With a single glance, one could tell that this place was unfathomably deep. Yu didn't hesitate at all. He leapt in. The sound of wind grew louder and louder, and then, he reached the bottom. This was completely different from what he expected. Yu wasn't prepared for this. His incomparably stable body began to stagger a little. The woman's arrogant mocking laughter echoed in his ears. She really wasn't afraid of death. Even at this time, she still had the mind to play such petty tricks. In a corner of the cave, faint traces of light circulated. Although he couldn't see clearly because of the darkness, there was no way Yu would mistake this aura for a transmission array. They really had arrived at the transmission array. The woman behind him stopped laughing. "Put me down. When we are transmitting, we cannot receive any outside interference." From the direction of the cave entrance, the roars of monster beasts could already be heard. It was clear that the pitch-black cave entrance wouldn't be able to scare them for too long. Yu remained silent. The woman lightly said, "What is there to hesitate about? One person living is better than both of us dying. If you really feel guilty, you can come back here in the future to pay your respects. While you're at it, you can also kill a few hundred monster beasts. Consider it revenge for me." Yu bitterly smiled. "I don't have that kind of strength." The woman was enraged. "Even if you don't, for better or worse you should at least agree to it first and let me feel happy. Aren't you afraid that I'll turn hostile and drag you down with me to die?" Yu smiled. "I always thought that you weren't afraid of death, but now that I've heard you speak such nonsense, I've discovered that you are also afraid. Then don't die. Let's live on together." The woman sneered. "Don't speak as if you know so much. If I die, you won't be able to do anything about it." Yu shook his head. "That might not be true." With a flick of his sleeves, the sky thunder bamboo appeared in a flash of light. Its roots seemed to have a mind of their own as they drilled into the ground. Then, every branch and leaf erupted with dazzling lightning that gathered into a pool of thunder that sealed off the cave entrance. The roars of the monster beasts were immediately filled with anger, mixed with several pained roars. It was clear that those closest to the cave entrance had already suffered the pain of thunder. Yu turned his head, a smile on his face. "Now, let's live on together." The woman's pale face revealed a complex expression. She gently sighed. "Then let's live on for a bit longer." Several breaths of time later, the transmission array lit up. Space twisted and the two figures vanished from sight. Chapter 288. The two sides of the transmission array were connected to each other, so if the array formation on the other side was destroyed, the array formation here wouldn't be able to survive either. Before the blazing light around Yu had time to fade away, he heard a shattering sound in his ears. Then, a maid appeared in front of him. Her face was like a bun, and her eyes were red with joy. "Miss!" She rushed over. But before her hands touched him, she froze where she was. Her face flushed with excitement, but it instantly vanished. A warm liquid fell onto his neck, winding down. Yu could feel its stickiness and the faint smell of blood. He looked up at the frozen maid and said, "Hurry and call for someone." Someone come." Yu looked at the flustered maid who nearly tripped over the threshold and ran out the door. He coughed and said, "This maid of yours is quite loyal." The maid wiped her lips and humphed. "If she's stupid, then she's stupid. There's no need for you to say anything." Yu bitterly smiled. "I really didn't mean that." "Humph, do you think I'll believe you? The innocent will be innocent. A pervert like you, I'll spit on you." Big sister, please conduct yourself with dignity. There was the sound of rapid footsteps outside the door. With just a few words, so many people had arrived. It seemed that this woman's status wasn't ordinary. Voila, a group of beautiful women rushed in. A fragrant aroma immediately assailed his senses. The woman greedily sucked in several breaths and smiled. Everyone's here. What are you all standing around for? Hurry and carry Master Wei away. Before Qin Yu could respond, the woman behind him was snatched away by them. They rushed towards the door and vanished without a trace. From start to finish, no one noticed Qin Yu nor did anyone say a single word to him. Their presence was as weak as air. Master Wei, a woman actually had such a domineering name. She was truly fierce. Qin Yu looked down at his tattered and blood-stained clothes. Then, he bitterly smiled and walked away. After passing through a long corridor and passing through an elegant courtyard, the scene in front of him suddenly widened. Qin Yu could feel a familiar smell. He looked up at the beautiful red lanterns, as well as the pleasant fragrance that lingered in his nose and mouth. He finally realized where he was. At the inn. This was the place that Su Jiao had arranged for him to stay in, an alluring brothel of pleasure. If it weren't for his powerful soul and firm will, he would have nearly lost control of himself. Thus, he naturally had a deep impression of her. That woman actually lived here. Who was she? Qin Yu wasn't stupid enough to think that someone as strong as her would use her looks to serve others. Of course, even if she was willing to do it, no one would dare to interfere with her business. Today, the inn was frighteningly deserted. Looking around, there wasn't a single person to be seen. If it weren't for the TV series being played on a nearby screen, Qin Yu would have thought that some accident had occurred in the beast hunting battalion. After a while, no one came out. Qin Yu thought for a moment and decided to bid his farewells. However, how was the woman's injury? I hope she's going to be okay. Shaking his head, Qin Yu followed his memories and walked out. But, he had clearly underestimated the size of the inn and the complexity of its interior. Injured, his head was a little dizzy, and he actually lost his way. After walking for a while, he still couldn't find his way out. He raised his head and looked in all directions, feeling that everything was the same. As he was laughing at himself, he heard the sound of sobbing. Moreover, this voice belonged to a woman. Qin Yu thought for a moment. Although he felt that it was a bit rude to approach her at this time, it was still better than continuing to wander around like a headless fly. He took several steps forwards and arrived outside the rockery. He coughed and the sobbing stopped. Several breaths of time later, a steamed bun with red and swollen eyes cautiously peeked out. Oh, it was actually someone he knew. The steamed bun-faced maid's eyes widened. Why are you here? Qin Yu rubbed his nose. He decided not to say that he was lost, that would be too shameful. Oh, I was just casually strolling around. I'm a bit tired now, so I was about to bid my farewells. The steamed bun-faced maid was crying her heart out. Her little head was a mess, but she also felt that these words were a bit strange, especially when Qin Yu's body was covered in blood. But, she didn't say anything. She stood up and bowed, displaying her good upbringing. I respectfully bid you farewell. Qin Yu was stunned. This was it. Weren't you supposed to be seeing me off? Little girl, you have such poor eyesight. Just how did you become a maid? As he was feeling a headache coming on, a gorgeously dressed woman ran over. Tsong Tsong, the miss wants to see that man. Has he left yet? As she turned around the rockery, her eyes met Qin Yu's. She was stunned for a moment and then overjoyed. She grabbed onto his arm and said, "Let's go, the miss wants to see you." Qin Yu didn't stop her. If that woman wanted to see him, there should be a reason. The steamed bun-faced maid followed behind. She staggered along the way and her wounds were starting to hurt again. She must have torn open quite a bit. Chinyu forced a smile but didn't say anything. This was because it seemed that this matter was urgent. Outside the room, there were many women standing, each one incomparably beautiful. Their red eyes seemed even more charming, making it hard for one to bear looking at them. Madame Mulberry had seen Chinyu before. She paused for a moment, clearly recognizing him. But she wasn't in the mood to say anything. She nodded and said, "Please go in. Master Wei's body is weak, so don't let her speak too much." Chinyu furrowed his eyebrows. He nodded and pushed open the door. The room was filled with the rich smell of herbs. The woman had changed into white clothes and was lying comfortably on a warm bed. She didn't even open her eyes when she heard the door open. She lazily said, "For better or for worse, we've gone through trials and tribulations together. I haven't asked for your name yet." Chinyu. So, no imposing aura at all. The woman curled her lips. "You can call me Master Wei." Chinyu was silent for a moment. "Your wounds," the woman lightly said, "I can live a little longer." She revealed a smug smile. "I already said that if I die, you won't be able to do anything about it." As if she had really won something. Chinyu frowned, not speaking. The woman curled her lips. "The one who is going to die is me, so I should be the one sad. Don't ruin my final good mood. The reason I called you here is to tell you what happened after I die. Don't hide anything and you won't be implicated." She finally opened her eyes. She lazily looked at Chinyu for several breaths of time and waved her hand. Go. I want to rest." Chinyu smiled. "All right. I'll come see you later." He turned and left. The woman was stunned for a moment. Then, she quietly sighed and closed her eyes. Madame Mulberry lightly said, "We are all women, so we won't keep any guests here. Tsong, see them off." Chinyu waved his hand. "Does she still have a chance?" Madame Mulberry frowned. "We will naturally deal with Master Wei's injuries. There is no need for guests to worry about him." The young maid who had just walked out curled her lips. She forcefully suppressed her sobs as tears flowed down her cheeks. Chinyu thought for a moment and said, "I haven't known Master Wei for long, but we can be considered to have gone through life and death situations together. If there is anything you need, I might be able to help." Madame Mulberry's complexion relaxed a little, but she still didn't say anything. She shook her head and was about to decline when the young maid suddenly said, "Madam, perhaps he has a way. I don't want the miss to die, I don't want to." The young maid's eyes turned red and she immediately began to cry, sobbing. It was a pitiful sight. Madame Mulberry wanted to scold her, but when she opened her mouth, she couldn't say anything. The young maid bowed. "Gashed, my family's miss has suffered a bloodline backlash and she cannot move at all. But there is no way in the camp to save her. If this continues, the miss, she won't be able to last past today." Chinyu's complexion darkened. This woman, as he thought about the tyrannical and unparalleled strength she revealed in the wilderness, he couldn't help but sigh. Now, no matter how he looked at it, he still owed her a life. His thoughts raced. Chinyu asked, "Is there a solution?" Madame Mulberry said in a low voice, "The miss's injuries can only be alleviated if she returns home. The key problem now is that her body can no longer withstand even a single transmission. The only way is to temporarily stabilize her injuries. Unfortunately, there is no way to accomplish this in the camp. Those alchemists in the camp that are always bragging about are all trash. They can't even refine the 9 mystic heavens pill. Big sister, that is the 9 Mystic Heavens pill, a top spirit pill. Not even an ordinary alchemy grandmaster can refine it. I don't care. In short, they are all trash. Those people outside are also trash. They have worked for so many years and yet they can't even find a single 9 Mystic Heavens pill. Madame Mulberry's complexion darkened. Enough, shut up. Her eyes swept over the last woman who spoke. She revealed a look of fear and quickly lowered her head. She knew, with Master Wei's current situation, only the 9 Mystic Heavens pill can save him. If you don't have a way, then leave as soon as possible. The meaning behind her words was clear: leave as soon as possible and don't get in the way. Qin Yu had a thoughtful look. 9 Mystic Heavens pill, Madame Mulberry's expression froze. Do you have one? Or do you know where? The bun-faced maid and the surrounding girls all looked over at him. Qin Yu shook his head. That's not it. These words were infuriating. Why did you make such an expression? It was really annoying. Madame Mulberry took a deep breath. Song Song, send our guest off. Qin Yu lifted a hand. Wait a moment. Although I don't have a 9 Mystic Heavens pill and I don't know where I can find one, if you have the materials, perhaps I can try refining one. The bun-faced maid's eyes widened. She had an expression that said, "What did you say? Did I hear wrong?" 9 Mystic Heavens pill. That was the 9 Mystic Heavens pill. Although she had a low status, she had followed at the side of the mists since she was a child. She had been influenced by what she had seen and heard, so her horizons weren't low. She also had some understanding of the 9 Mystic Heavens pill. This was a top spirit pill of the 3 upper grades. No matter how serious one's injuries were, after swallowing it, one would be able to remain unharmed for 7 days. Qin Yu had said that ordinary alchemy grandmasters didn't have the confidence to refine one. In truth, these words weren't correct. To be more precise, an alchemy grandmaster had less than a 10% chance of successfully refining a pill. Only those extremely strong alchemy grandmaster amongst grandmasters would have a 30 to 50% chance of successfully refining a pill. Now, Qin Yu actually said that he could try refining one. This joke, wasn't it going too far? Madame Mulberry's complexion darkened. Qin Yu, I have treated you as Master Wei's guest, so I have tolerated you. You can leave now. Qin Yu's finger cut through space. A flame flashed, brilliant and dazzling. I am an alchemist, and I am not joking about this. If you are willing, I will give it a try. Otherwise, I will have done my best. Even if this woman dies, I won't feel like I owe her anything. There was a heavy silence. Madame Mulberry had a dignified expression. That void fire just now was an essential alchemy skill, but when Qin Yu used it, it seemed as smooth as flowing water. Just this point alone was enough to determine that he was an alchemist. Did he really have the confidence to refine the 9 Mystic Heavens pill? Although reason told her that this was impossible, Master Wei's life hung on the line. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, she still couldn't miss it. Madame Mulberry clenched her teeth. We only have 3 sets of materials for the 9 Mystic Heavens pill. Qin Yu thought for a moment and nodded. That should be enough. Madame Mulberry relaxed. Qin Yu's calm demeanor gave her a bit more confidence. But, his next words nearly caused her to turn hostile. I will have to trouble you to give me the pill recipe and refining method for the 9 Mystic Heavens pill. What did he mean? What did he mean? He didn't even know the pill recipe and yet he dared to say that he could refine the 9 Mystic Heavens pill. Chapter 289. The in-speed was much faster than Qin Yu expected. The pill formula and 3 sets of materials sealed in metal boxes were delivered to him within an hour. After carefully reading through the pill recipe and looking over the refining steps and techniques, Qin finally gained some understanding of the 9 Mystic Heavens pill. It was no wonder that the group of women had looked at him with shock and doubt when he said he was going to forge the pill. Silently calculating, even if he used his full strength, the probability of success was only 1 in 10, perhaps even lower. If one added in the steps of adapting to the alchemy, all 3 sets of materials would turn to waste. It would be impossible to see even the shadow of the 9 Mystic Heavens pill. Luckily, when it came to alchemy, he had never relied on himself. If the little blue lamp was counted in, then there should be a chance. He opened the first metal box. This box was the same as the one he used to exchange for the primary pill collection. From this, it could be seen how precious the materials within were. Of course, with the preciousness of the 9 Mystic Heavens pill, even an idiot would know that the materials required to refine it were definitely extremely valuable. There were 7 main materials, 13 supplementary materials, and 18 types of fire, transfer, and pill condensation. There were a total of 38 materials. After opening the box, a rich spiritual aura assailed his nostrils. Just one breath of it made him feel refreshed. After carefully looking over everything and making sure that all the materials were intact, Qin took a deep breath. He turned and said, "I will begin refining the pill now. During this time, no matter what happens, do not disturb me." The bun-faced maid watched as Qin closed the door behind him. Her pale face was filled with sorrow and tears nearly flowed down her cheeks. A person who didn't even know the pill formula started to refine pills after reading it a few times. How could there be such a thing in this world? You should at least try to figure it out a little more and give me some confidence. Originally, the little maid had been hiding a final bit of hope in her heart. But now, she had completely given up. He turned to look at the backyard of the inn. His mother and the others had already thought of a way to save the young miss. He wondered how she was doing now. At this time, she wasn't in front of the miss and instead ran over to watch Qin refine pills. She was really stupid. In the chamber, Qin swept out with his divine sense. He didn't sense anything wrong. He flicked his sleeves and took out the fleeting flame furnace. This pill furnace came from Mangzi. Even now, Qin still hadn't been able to completely see through it. It was of an extraordinary grade. In addition, it had followed Qin for a long time and he had used it the most. Now, it was the best choice to refine the 9 Mystic Heavens pill. Even with the little blue lamp in hand, Qin didn't dare to be careless. This was his first time refining a pill of this level, so he had to fully utilize his own advantages. His finger streaked across the air and a flame appeared out of thin air, falling into the cauldron and activating the formation within the cauldron. The cauldron absorbed the spiritual energy of the world and turned it into a blazing flame. Qin opened the metal box and took out the first material. With a shake of his hand, he sent it into the fleeting flame furnace. If other alchemists were to learn that Qin had started refining the pill recipe as soon as he obtained it, they would surely stomp their feet in anger. It was just like how the bun-faced maid had despaired before. Only if one's Tao of alchemy far surpassed the level of the pill they were refining could they rely on their superb skills and experience to directly start refining. If it was a pill that corresponded to one's own grade or even exceeded the grade of the pill, even if the success rate was disregarded, one would have to carefully consider it, analyze it again and again, and even simulate the refinement process before one dared to start. Furthermore, it was a precious item like the 9 Heavens Profound Pill. It wasn't that Qin didn't know all of this. The key problem was that what he lacked the most right now was time. That woman had suffered a backlash and might not be able to last past today. Thus, even if he knew that there was almost no chance of success if he hastily refined the pill, Qin still had to start. This was because only by truly refining the pill could he familiarize himself with the process in the shortest possible time. Qin Yu was expressionless. His heart was calm without any waves. He formed law formulas with his hands, controlling the changes in the flames and pouring in the heaven and earth spiritual energy. Soon, the first main material completely dissolved. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and threw in the second material. This was a supplementary spirit plant. The refining process was simple. All he needed to do was fuse it with the first main material. The refinement proceeded smoothly. Through his divine sense, Qin Yu could clearly sense that the two materials had already begun to fuse together. He lifted a hand and grabbed the third pill. Once the fusion was complete, he would throw it into the fleeting flame furnace. But at this time, there was a dull thumping sound. Qin Yu's fingers stiffened and his complexion paled. He withdrew his law formulas and extinguished the flames in the pill furnace. He opened the lid and faint traces of black smoke gushed out, accompanied by a burnt smell. The refinement had failed. This wasn't the time to condense the pill, nor was it the time to gather the materials. In fact, he hadn't even finished refining the materials. He had failed with the second material. Although he knew that refining the 9 Mystic Heavens pill wouldn't be easy, this failure was still outside of Qin Yu's expectations. In particular, when he thought there was no problem at all and everything was within his control, this failure was especially heavy. He frowned and thought for a long time. Then, he took out a pile of black waste and carefully poured it to the side. To other cultivators, materials that failed in the refinement were completely useless. But with the little blue lamp in hand, Qin Yu still had a chance to reuse them. He continued to refine. He took out the second material and soon arrived at the same second step as before. Qin Yu's divine sense completely erupted as he sensed the slightest reaction within the alchemy furnace. As he thought, as the materials began to fuse together, a faint and extremely weak rejection reaction appeared. But this wasn't because the medicinal properties didn't match, but because they were fusing too quickly. The first 2 materials of the 9 Mystic Heavens pill were the main and auxiliary materials. They formed the foundation of the pill. Thus, the medicinal properties of the 2 spirit plants completely attracted each other and complemented each other. Once they met, they would fuse together in the shortest possible time. But this sort of rapid fusion would cause the medicinal properties of the 2 spirit plants to be unable to completely fuse together. Instead, there would be a gap between them that would repel each other, ultimately leading to failure. Qin Yu realized this. He rapidly formed law formulas with his hands, slowing down the influx of heaven and earth spiritual strength and interfering with the fusing speed of the 2 materials. In a situation where the fusion was slowed by half, they finally fused together perfectly. As he thought, there was a reason why the 9 Mystic Heavens pill was so difficult to refine. Just the fusion of the second material had an extremely high requirement on the alchemist's divine sense. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to sense the reason and would only continue to fail. There was no time to be happy. The third material was about to be added, and there were still 35 more to come. Qin Yu's expression became increasingly dignified. There were only 3 materials and he only had a day's time. As for whether or not he could complete the refinement, the last bit of confidence he had in his heart had faded by a great deal. The bun-faced maid propped up her chin with her hands, staring at the closed door in a daze. Qin Yu had already been inside for over 6 hours. She had no idea what the current situation was. Perhaps the fact that he hadn't come out yet was the best result. The skies gradually darkened. Today's night was incomparably deep and gloomy, as if countless drops of ink had condensed together. Just looking at it made one feel an inexplicable chill in their hearts. The bun-faced maid shivered. She quickly lowered her head. She felt that this night was too ominous and she absolutely didn't want to look at it again. The miss would be fine, she would definitely be fine. She silently prayed in her heart, over and over again. Her thoughts were a bit hazy. After a moment, she heard the cry of a bird in her ears. It was Big Sister Bitterflower's thrush. This little bird had recently gone into heat. Every morning before the sun rose, it would let out a loud cry that annoyed her to death. When she woke up, she had to have the Miss speak to Big Sister Bitterflower and have her tie up this bird's beak. Miss, the bun-faced maid shivered. She sat up straight and looked up in panic. She could see that the sky was beginning to brighten. She forcefully pinched her chubby cheeks and felt a burst of pain. This wasn't a dream, it really was daybreak. The bun-faced maid curled her lips and nearly cried. She had fallen asleep, she had actually fallen asleep. At this time, the Miss was unconscious and on the verge of death. She wished that she could kill herself. She quickly stood up and walked to the door. The aura of a spell spread out from within. It was clear that Chinyu hadn't come out yet. The bun-faced maid relaxed a little. Then, she began to panic. Why hadn't he come out yet? At this time, the sound of crying echoed out from the inn's rear courtyard. Because it was far away, she couldn't hear it clearly. The bun-faced maid's face instantly paled. Miss. Schwa, tears instantly streamed down her face. She turned and ran away. As for Chinyu, she shouldn't have believed him to begin with. She had wasted her last night to accompany the Miss. Miss, hold on a little longer, wait for me to come over. No, 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 Miss, don't die. All sorts of thoughts raced through her mind. The young maid's crying became even more turbulent. She arrived at the Miss courtyard. As she thought, the crying came from within. The young maid's legs weakened and she nearly fell to the ground. Miss! With a sorrowful cry, she rushed into the room. As she saw the ruddy and smiling Miss lying on the bed, she couldn't help but be stunned for a moment before being overjoyed. Miss, you're fine. That's great, that's great. She turned and bowed again and again. Thank you, Mother, thank you Big Sisters for saving my family's Miss. Madame Mulberry and the group of mournful women around her stiffened, a look of unwillingness in their eyes. The woman laughed and scolded, what poor eyesight. If it weren't for you serving me since you were a child, would have already replaced you. She waved her hand and pulled the dazed young maid to her side. She turned and said, Auntie Hong, I'll have to ask you to take care of little Tsong Tsong from now on. She is stupid, lazy, and gluttonous. In the future, you have to find someone with a good temper and a good family background for her. Otherwise, I fear she will starve to death. Madame Mulberry's eyes reddened. She squeezed out a smile. Master Wei, rest assured that Tsong Tsong will be my daughter in the future. Master Wei, we will also take care of Tsong Tsong. Don't worry. Master Wei, I can't bear to part with you. The redness on the young maid's face faded away. Her pale eyes widened. Little, Miss, the woman rewarded her with a sugar-roasted chestnut. She laughed and scolded, little your ass. Your chest is already so big and you call it little. Are you mocking me? A trace of sadness flashed in her eyes. She pursed her lips and said, from now on, listen to Auntie Hong. Don't run around by yourself, do you hear me? Chapter 290. With a light creaking sound, the door opened from the inside. Qin Yu's face was tired and his eyes were bloodshot. The bun-faced maid was no longer there. He could faintly hear sobbing in his ears. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Don't die, bang, the ground shook. Qin Yu shot up into the skies like a cannonball, heading straight for the source of the sobbing. In the courtyard, a group of women stared with wide eyes at the multicolored lights that surged in the air. The spells of the inn had been completely triggered. Just who was it that couldn't think straight? Did they want to be buried with Master Wei? Looking at the situation, they really were heading straight for this place. The door suddenly opened. Auntie Hong's face darkened. Who dares to break into my inn's backyard? How insolent! Her voice billowed like an invisible tide. This beautiful mulberry actually had such a powerful cultivation. In the skies above the courtyard, the multicolored spells shattered. Qin Yu fell to the ground, stumbling and spitting out a mouthful of blood. Auntie Hong had already learned from Tsong Tsong that it was hopeless to refine pills, so she no longer cared about Qin Yu. Her previous patients became even uglier. She coldly said, Qin Yu, I will consider you as Master Wei's graciousness, so I won't bother with you for breaking into my inn's backyard. Leave immediately. Qin Yu wiped the corners of his mouth and nodded. I do need to rest. I'll give this pill to that woman. I hope I can make it in time. He opened his hand, revealing a pill in his palm. Beneath the pale morning light, it shimmered with a brilliant light. Auntie Hong lost her voice. 9 Mystic Heavens pill. Her eyes widened, her face filled with shock. Qin Yu coughed. Hurry up, otherwise that woman really will die. Pooey. Even if you die, I won't die. A hand reached out and grabbed the pill. She swallowed it, frowned for a moment, and then curled her lips beneath everyone's nervous eyes. It's just a suso. The medicinal effects aren't as good as the ones I ate before. Not as good as the ones before. In other words, this 9 Mystic Heavens pill was really effective. Auntie Hong's eyes widened, joy written all over her face. As for the bun-faced woman, her eyes rolled back in her head. Before she could catch her breath, she slumped to the ground. Qin Yu sneered. If you think it's not good, then spit it out. I don't want to give it to you. The woman looked him up and down. You didn't want to give me anything to eat and yet you ran away so quickly. Luckily Auntie Hong didn't manage the spell today, otherwise you would have already died. Her face was filled with ridicule and pride. But after a moment she revealed a look of vigilance. Qin Yu, don't have any improper thoughts towards me. It's impossible for us to be together. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and left. You think too much. The woman stomped her feet and cursed. In the end, Qin Yu wasn't able to directly leave. His current condition was far worse than when he first arrived. He could only see 2 shadows in front of him. The only reason he hadn't fainted was because he was stubbornly holding on. But stubbornly holding on could only last for a while, so when he turned the corner and saw a patch of soft grass, he sat down comfortably inside. He lay down on his back, and when his head touched the grass, he fell asleep. A moment later, Auntie Hong sent the miss away. As she turned, she saw the snoring Qin Yu. She was startled for a moment before her eyes softened. She waved her hand and said, Carry Mr. Qin back to his room to rest. A group of women hurriedly lifted Qin Yu up. Their fingers inadvertently traced his body and their eyes brightened. They couldn't tell that this boy was so thin, but his body was actually quite meaty. Auntie Hong walked in front. She coughed and said, All right, pay attention to your table manners. When Mr. Qin wakes up, if he is willing, there will be a chance for you to serve him in bed. When Qin Yu woke up, he was lying down on a warm and soft bed. A light fragrance lingered around his breath. This smell was a bit strange, but it was truly pleasant. He couldn't help but take several deep breaths before opening his eyes. At this time, the door was pushed open. A bun-faced maid carrying a basin of water walked in with a look of pleasant surprise. Mr. Qin, you've woken up. Qin Yu smiled. Where is your miss? The maid put down the basin and knelt on the ground. Reporting to Mr. The miss has already returned home to recuperate. She paused for a moment and then earnestly said, "This servant Song Tsong wishes to thank Mr. Chin for saving her life on behalf of my miss. In the future, if you have any orders, this servant will obey them." A charming laughter came from outside the door. "Song Tsong, you little hussy, this big sister knows that you can't be relied on. We haven't even started yet and you've already started." A woman with an enchanting figure and charming eyebrows stepped in. Her eyes were like soft water, charming and charming. The maid flushed red. "Big Sister Peony, don't speak nonsense." "I didn't." "You still say you didn't. You'll agree to any order. Isn't this hint obvious enough?" Peony continued to tease her. But as she saw the maid's face turn even redder, as if she were about to cry, she no longer teased her. She turned and bowed. "Peony greets Mr. Chin." Chin Yu bowed in return. "Miss Peony, how are you? Is this the inn?" Peony smiled and nodded. In order to save Master Wei, Mr. Chin has spent too much energy and has already slept for 3 days and 3 nights. If he hadn't woken up, Auntie Hong would have called for a doctor. Chin Yu shook his head. "I'm fine now." He turned around and left the bed. "I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll bid my farewells here." Peony hurriedly said, "Mr. Chin, please wait a moment." Chin Yu frowned. Peony respectfully said, "Auntie Hong has ordered that after Mr. Chin wakes up, she must personally thank you. Moreover, there are some matters that she hopes to discuss with Mr. Chin." Auntie Hong said that this would also be beneficial to Mr. Chin. Chin Yu's eyes flashed. "Then, let me wash up first." Peony covered her mouth and smiled. "Song Tsong, why aren't you helping Mr. Chin clean up?" She bowed. "I will wait outside for Mr. Chin." Song Tsong lowered her head, nearly turning into an ostrich. But this appearance only made her chest seem even more astonishing. Chin Yu coughed several times and turned his head, allowing her to help him tidy up. He pushed open the door and left. Peony bowed and led the way. They soon arrived at a quiet courtyard where Auntie Hong was already waiting outside. "I greet Mr. Chin." Chin Yu cupped his hands together. "Auntie Hong is too polite. Mr. Chin, please." When they entered the courtyard, Peony poured some tea and left. There were only the two of them in the hall. Auntie Hong smiled. "Mr. Chin is quick-witted, so I won't beat around the bush. I'll get straight to the point." Chin Yu nodded. "Auntie Hong, please speak." Auntie Hong had a serious expression. "The inn hopes that we can cooperate with Mr. Chin. We will provide the materials and you will refine the pills. Of course, since Mr. Chin saved Master Wei, you are an honored guest of my inn. I will certainly give you an extremely generous reward." This time, it really surpassed Chin Yu's expectations. He thought that the reason Auntie Hong ordered people to keep him here was because she hoped that he would refine some more pills. After all, the success of the 9 Mystic Heavens pill was enough to demonstrate Chin Yu's formidable alchemy strength. But now it seemed that his thoughts had been too simple. As for this Auntie Hong in front of him, as well as the inn he was in, they weren't simple at all. In truth, Auntie Hong's proposal was incomparably in line with Chin Yu's current needs. But he wasn't in a hurry to agree. He thought for a moment and said, "Auntie Hong's words leave me a bit confused." Auntie Hong was an astute person. From these words, she could tell that Chin Yu had no intention of refusing. Her smile immediately brightened. "It was my mistake. I didn't clearly explain things to Mr. Chin. Our inn is a place of pleasure, but the truth is that we do all sorts of alchemy materials. Within the entire beast hunting battalion, we are responsible for purchasing most of the materials that the beast hunters have. Everything else wasn't important." With just these words, it was clear just how strong the inn was. What sort of place was the beast hunting battalion? It was a group of people that spent their days hunting monster beasts and living a life of licking blood off the edge of a blade. Did they really expect to be approachable? To be able to purchase a massive amount of materials here and also do business that didn't require any capital, one didn't need to be an idiot to know just how fierce the inn was. Yu didn't consider it for too long before nodding. The inn's request was simply too good, he had no leeway to refuse. As long as he could begin to refine pills in bulk, then with the little blue lamp's assistance, Yu's cultivation would rise once more. Auntie Hong was all smiles. Then I'll have to trouble Mr. Qin from now on. The inn's agreement with Yu was that the overall pill success rate was 40%. Although this wasn't a low requirement, with Mr. Qin's alchemy strength that surpassed a grandmaster, he would still be able to earn a considerable amount of profit. After all, the amount of materials that the inn received was astonishing. Unfortunately, what Auntie Hong didn't know was that Yu had the little blue lamp in his hands. Waste materials could be reused, and the actual success rate of pills would far surpass her imagination. But on the other hand, what Auntie Hong asked for wasn't for Yu to help her refine more pills. After all, the inn was a chain of businesses. Over the years, there had been a considerable number of alchemy masters recruited. What she truly valued was Yu's alchemy strength. As long as the two of them cooperated happily, it wasn't impossible to ask him to refine some extremely difficult pills in the future. Moreover, with an extreme alchemy master joining them, the hidden benefits that the inn could gather from all aspects would be incomparably astonishing. Of course, from Auntie Hong's point of view, the inn would provide additional compensation. They couldn't let Mr. Qin work for nothing. For instance, with Mr. Qin's status, he would naturally provide some benefits to the inn. For instance, at this time, as Yu was bathing, the door was pushed open. Two young women covered in light gauze walked in with blushing faces. Their exquisite bodies and their hidden places were faintly discernible beneath the gauze. The temptation was so great that it broke through the heavens. "We will help Mr. bathe." As he was stunned, the two women bowed and walked towards the bathtub. Yu was startled. He quickly waved his hand. No need, I'm fine by myself." The two women stopped. They had bitter expressions. "Mr. doesn't like us sisters." As they approached, it was only upon closer inspection that he discovered that the two of them looked exactly the same. It was just that the one on the left had a slightly larger chest. As for why he could see, what nonsense. With such a thin layer of gauze, it was as if they weren't wearing any clothes. Only a blind person wouldn't be able to see them. Yu turned around. "It's not that you two aren't good, but that my body is currently injured. If there isn't anything else, please return." The two women glanced at each other and said, "We sisters will be waiting outside. If Mr. needs us, please call us at any time." These words were clearly giving him a chance to change his mind. If he was too embarrassed to refuse, he could still call them back. These words were like a kitten's paw gently scratching at his heart, making him feel an unbearable itch. Hearing the door close, Yu let out a long breath. He bitterly smiled. He didn't need to think to know that this was definitely Auntie Hong's methods. She had even used a honey trap, and it was the legendary twin swallows, cough cough. But thinking about it, this also showed how much she valued their cooperation. This was good. As long as everyone sincerely cooperated, they would each take what they needed. When he obtained the cultivation pills, he wouldn't let the inn suffer a loss. He tried to think about these serious matters so that his mind could forget about the unserious matters. But there were always two gauze swaying in his mind, making it impossible for him to fully concentrate. After a long time, Yu sighed. He stepped out of the bathtub and turned on the cold water valve. In an exquisite and luxurious hall, a white-dressed woman leaned against a window. Sunlight sprinkled down on her body and a light breeze lifted the hem of her skirt. It seemed as if she would float away in the next moment. However, a hateful gauze covered most of her face. One could only imagine how beautiful she was. A maid lowered her head and quietly walked in. "Miss, there is a message jade slip from the Southern Overwatch Pass." Chapter 291. Li Xiang pushed open the door and walked out. He stretched his waist, clearly feeling refreshed. He couldn't help but reveal a look of praise. Everyone knew that the inn's expenses were high. Spending a single time here was enough to change locations for 3 days. Expensive things had their own benefits. For instance, the women's martial arts. The inn's women were all skilled in bedroom techniques and dual cultivation. Not only did this not harm the guests' vitality, but it was also beneficial to their cultivation. Secondly, there was safety. There was no problem with the women being clean. They were all prominent figures, so no one wanted to have something dirty growing down there. Of course, this was only one aspect of safety. More importantly, no matter where they were, the inn had never been investigated. This could be said to be amazing. Li Xiang sighed inwardly. He met an old flame and greeted her. As she coquettishly pouted, he pinched her amazingly elastic bottom. He laughed twice and prepared to leave, but after thinking for a moment, he turned back. In 2 days, he was going to go out. It wasn't anything major, but it was still a bit dangerous. So, before he left, he wanted to see if he could break through his current cultivation bottleneck. The female cultivator behind the counter smiled sweetly. "May I ask what guest needs?" Li Xiang was tempted, but he didn't dare to reveal it. There were countless women in the inn, but some of them couldn't be touched. Whoever touched them would suffer misfortune. He coughed and said, "I would like to purchase 20 overwhelming pills." "Please wait a moment." The female cultivator lowered her head and tapped the screen. Soon, a jade pillar rose up from the ground beside her. The top was transparent and could be opened. There was a small jade bottle placed inside. The female cultivator opened the jade pillar and took out a pill. "Guest, please take a look." Li Xiang smiled and shook his head. "There's no need. I trust the inn's reputation." He took out a spirit stone card and paid. His hand phone immediately received a text notification. Looking at his balance, he shivered. But in front of this beautiful woman, he simply smiled and turned to leave. Everything was expensive in the inn, and pills were the same. Compared to similar items on the market, the average price was 20% higher. But the reasoning was the same. The inn's pills were expensive, but the medicinal efficacy was guaranteed. Moreover, there wouldn't be a situation where the pills were inferior or flawed. Li Xiang hurried back to his residence. His complexion was solemn. He thought that he had to handle everything properly this time, otherwise he would soon go bankrupt. Calming himself down, Li Xiang took out an overwhelming pill, opened its individually sealed packaging, and swallowed it. He had already eaten quite a number of these kinds of magic power-enhancing medicinal pills, so he was quite experienced, so he quickly noticed the difference. The medicinal energy that had melted was clearly much stronger. Furthermore, it was extremely lively, quickly flowing through his body, generating waves of warmth. It was like soaking in a hot spring. Half an hour later, Li Xiang suddenly opened his eyes. His joy was mixed with bewilderment. The medicinal efficacy of the inn's pills was publicly acknowledged. But this overwhelming pill, the medicinal efficacy was a bit too good. It was a bit exaggerated to say that 1 pill was equal to 2, but 1.5 pills was no problem at all. Without any time to think, Li Xiang took out a second overwhelming pill and swallowed it. This time, the refinement took a longer time. 2 hours later, he opened his eyes, his expression uncertain. An overwhelming pill would normally take 2 hours to completely refine. Furthermore, its medicinal effects were on par with the medicinal pills he had bought from the inn. Then what was with the first overwhelming pill? Li Xiang furrowed his eyebrows. Then, his eyes brightened. He found the packaging of the 2 overwhelming pills that had been tossed to the side. As he thought, the production time was different from the batch. His eyes brightened. Could it be that the inn had a batch of overwhelming pills that had particularly good effects? If this was true, then this was a tremendous advantage. He hurriedly poured out the remaining 18 overwhelming pills. Li Xiang's luck wasn't bad. There were actually 2 more inside, the same batch as the first one. 2 hours later, Li Xiang revealed a look of ecstasy. It was true, it was actually true. This batch of overwhelming pills had medicinal efficacy that was several times higher than normal, nearly reaching medium grade. To buy medium grade pills at 20% the price of low grade pills, the difference in profits was astonishing. Without hesitation, Li Xiang took out his handphone and dialed the inn's customer service number. A beautiful melody sounded out. It was the theme song of a recently popular TV series. The singer was Li Xiang's favorite type, but he wasn't in the mood to listen to it. He only felt that every breath of time he waited was incomparably slow. But today, for some reason, the customer service number of the inn, which was usually picked up after a single call, actually waited for a full minute. When the slightly hurried and beautiful voice of a woman rang out on the other end, Li Xiang directly interrupted, "I want to order a batch of overwhelming pills. The inn packaged them 3 days ago, batch 2764. The woman paused and revealed an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry guest, the batch of pills you purchased has been completely sold." Li Xiang panicked. "That's impossible. I just bought them a few hours ago. Moreover, you didn't even check, so how do you know they're gone?" The female voice said respectfully, "Hello, customer. Before you placed your order, many people have already called to inquire about it. I have already checked clearly. The 2764th batch of overwhelming pills has indeed been completely sold. Is there anything else I can help you with?" Li Xiang hung up the phone, a bitter smile on his face. If he could discover something, then others would naturally be able to as well. What a waste of a good opportunity. As Li Xiang sighed, the matter regarding the inn's overwhelming pills had already caused a stir in a large number of people. It's almost comparable to a medium-grade overwhelming pill. This is strange. Everyone knows that the inn doesn't do unprofitable business. This matter is indeed strange, but just these pills alone can't prove anything. Let's wait and see. The cultivators that were paying attention to this matter didn't have to wait for long. The second wave soon arrived. Hurry and go to the inn to buy batch 2764 of Enchanting pills. The price of a low-grade pill and the medicinal efficacy of a medium-grade pill. Heavens, it's actually true. I want to buy 1,000. The inn's customer service number ushered in another wave of calls. All of the 2764 batches of pills were sold out in the shortest possible time. At this time, many people's hearts began to race. Then, the third batch of 2764 batches of pills, blood spirit pills. Although the types were different, the medicinal efficacy and quality were still enough to drive people crazy. 2764 had nearly become synonymous with the inn during this period of time. In everyone's hearts, they began to faintly speculate about the inn's actions. It seemed that the inn had recently recruited a powerful alchemist. The high-quality pills that they were selling were all to build up momentum. Once they attracted enough attention, they would officially introduce this alchemist. Reality proved that there were many smart people. All of the inn's chain stores made announcements at the same time today. All of the 2,764 batches of pills sold recently have been refined by a new alchemy grandmaster of the inn. Moreover, we guarantee that the materials used are all ordinary grade and there are no other methods used to enhance them. We are only selling them at a fair price to thank our customers for their support towards the inn. From today onwards, there was a vast array of beautiful flowers. To sum it up in a few words, our inn has a very fierce alchemist. From today onwards, we will start accepting work. In a brightly lit meeting room, someone slammed the table. The inn's tricks are becoming more and more plentiful. If this continues, then all of our business will be stolen away by them. People of the same trade were enemies, especially in the alchemy business. This type of profiteering business made their eyes red with jealousy. Philosophy Watch was one of them. For the last 10 years, our net profit has been decreasing every year. The sect is already dissatisfied with us. It's all this damned inn's fault. 30% of our profits have been stolen away by them. We can't continue like this. Otherwise, if we are slowly nibbled away, all that awaits us is death. In the meeting room, everyone clenched their jaws. They wished that they could directly attack and raze the inn to the ground. But they had already tried this before. They weren't able to obtain any advantages and instead suffered some losses. In the seat of honor, a purple-robed old man lightly said, "The inn's arrogance is indeed too rampant." Everyone was overjoyed. Their eyes gathered on him. The purple-robed old man stood up and flicked his sleeves. This alchemist 19 is going to suffer. A divine light shined in his eyes, filled with confidence. Soon, the inn received Shin Yu's first large contract. The materials were incomparably precious and the rewards were astonishing. But, what left one's heart racing was the compensation clause for failing to refine the pill. In short, if he succeeded there would be tremendous benefits. But if he failed, his reputation would be ruined. Within Philosophy Watch, there were cheers and laughter. It's the elders' methods that are swift and fierce to take action against this alchemist 19. As long as we can step on him, the inn's reputation will surely be damaged. It's not just damaged. The alchemist they vigorously promoted will be completely destroyed in the blink of an eye because of a failed refinement. In the future, who will dare to casually join the inn? The elders' actions are like taking drastic measures. It's just that I fear they won't agree to these conditions. If they don't dare to accept it, then don't advertise yourself as an alchemy grandmaster. Even if the inn really refuses, can't we advertise ourselves? We will make sure they lose all face. The purple-robed old man had a smug expression. No matter what he chose, the inn would suffer a great loss. It was unknown where the news came from, but the inn's Grandmaster 19, this name was only a rumor. After all, no one knew the specific information about this Grandmaster. Since he refined pills in batch 2764 every time, that meant he was 19 in total. It was appropriate to call him Grandmaster 19. Of course, these were all minor details. What was important was that Grandmaster 19 had received a request to refine pills. It was said that the refinement difficulty was extremely high and the compensation terms were astonishing. An uproar of rumors began to spread. Many of the contents insinuated that this Master Number 19 didn't live up to his name, that he was just a way for the inn to attract attention, and that they probably didn't dare to accept this commission. Within the beast hunting battalion, Auntie Hong laid down a jade slip, her complexion gloomy. After personally inspecting the first batch of pills that Qin Yu refined, she discovered that they had amazing medicinal efficacy and was immediately overjoyed. Using ordinary materials and without any other supplementary methods, and even refining them in large quantities, they were still of such high quality. This was proof of Qin Yu's alchemy skills. After a short period of thought, Auntie Hong decided to borrow this batch of pills to boost Grandmaster Qin's reputation. Thus, batches of 2,764 pills entered the market at low prices. However, a mere nascent soul cultivation wasn't enough to make one feel at ease. Thus, she intentionally concealed information about Qin Yu in order to increase his mysteriousness and avoid unnecessary suspicions. Everything proceeded smoothly. The explosive popularity of batch 2764 attracted countless eyes. She took advantage of this opportunity to push out Qin Yu. This operation that had garnered a great deal of attention with minimal costs could be considered a success. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.